People say, when I get money, I'll do something. And money says, hey man, you do something, and only then will I come to you. Hello, and today's discussion is about money. That is, we'll be talking about the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, written by Robert Kiyosaki. Before I say anything more about the introduction of this book, I'm reminded of a quote by my doctor at Coxon. He wrote, "Rich Dad, Poor Dad doesn't teach shortcuts to becoming rich. It teaches how to build awareness about money, how to fulfill your financial responsibilities, and then how to become rich." So, let's begin. Friends, whenever the word responsibility comes up, I'm reminded of the man who, no matter how many setbacks or sorrows he faced in life, took our share of sorrow upon himself and gave us his share of happiness. That is, Dad. Even when his pockets were empty, I never saw him refuse to give me something. I've never seen a richer person in this world than my father. Keeping that father in mind, Robert Kiyosaki made him the main character of the story to try and impart the most important lessons in life. From childhood to youth, we just run after numbers. The way we are educated, the method of our studies, we've only heard from childhood to study, study, study. And after reaching a certain level, after reaching a certain age, we are told to decide what to do now.
Robert Kiyosaki beautifully highlights this point, that from childhood, financial knowledge should be taught as a subject in our schools and colleges. If the meaning of education today is to be successful in life and earn more money, then why shouldn't we learn the skill of managing money properly from childhood? School lasts for 6 to 8 hours, but the rest of the time is spent at home. So whether it's school or home, there's nothing wrong with teaching a child from a young age about the importance of money, its necessity, and how to manage it. I think this subject was missing somewhere. Maybe the struggle has been going on for many years that it should be started. It should be explained. Many movies have also been made on this, but even today, we are just running after numbers, numbers, and more numbers. If we learn the strategy to manage money properly, if our understanding improves, then I think the children of today, when they grow up, will be happy. To complete a person, their family, loved ones, friends, and lifestyle are all very important. It can't be said that money is everything, but yes, money is necessary to get everything. The book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, is dedicated to parents all over the world because they are a child's most important teachers. And it's also dedicated to those people who set an example, educate children, make an impression on them, and lead them. Gratitude. When there are so many people to thank, how can anyone say thank you? Certainly, for this book, I am grateful to my two fathers who were strong role models, and also to my mother, who taught me the lessons of love and kindness. Exactly 20 years ago, on June 1st, 1967, the Beatles released their album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. It reached the pinnacle of commercial and critical success. The album was #1 on the UK album charts for 27 weeks, and in America for 15 weeks. Time magazine called Sgt. Pepper's a historical turning point in the advancement of music.
It won 4 Grammy Awards in 1968, and it also won Album of the Year. It was the first rock album to receive this honor. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was published on my 50th birthday, April 8, 1997. Unlike the Beatles story, this book was not an instant success, neither from a commercial point of view nor from a critical one. In fact, the criticism that followed the book's publication was quite the opposite. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was originally self-published because every publisher we went to rejected my book. Some of the rejection letters had comments like, "You don't know what you're talking about." In 1997, Rich Dad, Poor Dad was a warning, a book for everyone about the future. 20 years later, millions of people around the world have become more aware of the warnings and lessons my rich dad gave about the future. Many, with the foresight of 2020, have said that his teachings were prophetic. The predictions came true. Some of these lessons are: Rich Dad's lesson number 1. The rich don't work for money. 20 years ago, many of my publishers rejected my book because they didn't agree with the first lesson of the rich dad. Today, people are more aware of the growing gap between the rich and everyone else. Between 1993 and 2010, more than 50% of America's national income went to the richest 1%. Since then, the situation has worsened. Economists at the University of California found that 95% of income growth between 2009 and 2012 went to that richest 1%. Lesson: income growth isn't going to employees, it's going to entrepreneurs and investors, not to people who work for money. Rich Dad's lesson: savers are losers. 20 years ago, most publishers strongly disagreed with this lesson from the rich dad. For the poor and middle class, saving money is a religion, a way out of poverty, and a protection from a cruel world. Many thought that calling savers losers was sacrilegious.
A picture is worth 1,000 words. If you look at the 120-year chart of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, you will see why and how savers lost. The chart shows that there were 3 major stock market crashes in the first decade of this new century. The chart illustrates these crashes. The first crash was the dot-com bubble crash around 2000. The second crash was the real estate crash of 2007. And the third was the banking crash of 2008. When you compare the 3 crashes of the 21st century with the huge crash of 1929, you realize just how massive those first 3 crashes of this century were. Note: printing notes. The chart shows that after each crash, the American government and the Federal Reserve Bank started printing notes. Saving the rich. Between 2000 and 2016, in the name of saving the economy, banks all over the world lowered interest rates and continued to print notes. While our leaders wanted us to believe that they were saving the world, the reality was that the rich were saving themselves and pushing the poor and middle class under the bus. Today, interest rates are less than 0 in many countries, so savers lose. Today, the biggest losers are the poor and middle class who work for money and save it. Rich Dad's lesson: your house is not an asset. 20 years ago, in 1997, every publisher who sent me a rejection letter criticized this lesson from the rich dad that your house is not an asset. 10 years later, in 2007, when subprime borrowers stopped paying installments on their subprime mortgages, the world's real estate bubble burst and millions of homeowners learned the hard truth of this lesson. Their houses were indeed a liability. The real problem: most people don't know that the real estate crash wasn't actually a real estate crash. The real estate crash wasn't caused by the poor, but by the rich. The rich created financial products called derivatives, which Warren Buffett called weapons of mass financial destruction. When these collective weapons of financial destruction exploded, the real estate market collapsed, and the blame was placed on the poor subprime borrowers.
In 2007, there were about $700 trillion in financial derivatives. Today, it is estimated that there are $1.2 quadrillion in financial derivatives. In other words, the real problem hasn't decreased, it has grown. 20 years ago, many publishers criticized Rich Dad, Poor Dad for revealing how and why the rich pay less tax. One said that this lesson was illegal. 10 years later, in 2007, President Barack Obama was running for re-election against former Governor Mitt Romney. When it was revealed that President Obama paid about 30% of his income in taxes and Governor Romney paid less than 13%, Mitt Romney's popularity started to decline and he lost the election. Again, tax became a central issue in the 2016 American presidential election. Instead of figuring out why Mitt Romney and President Trump legally paid less tax, the poor and middle class got angry. Although President Trump promised to cut taxes for the poor and middle class, the reality is that the rich will always pay less in taxes. The reason the rich pay less tax is found in Rich Dad's Lesson 1, The Rich Don't Work for Money. As long as a person works for money, they will pay tax. When presidential candidate Hillary Clinton was promising to raise taxes on the rich, she wasn't promising to raise taxes on the real rich, but on high-income people like doctors, actors, and lawyers. 20 years ago, although Rich Dad Poor Dad didn't achieve instant success like the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's album, it did reach the New York Times bestseller list by 2000 and stayed on that list for almost 7 years. Also in 2000, I got a call from Oprah Winfrey. I was on the Oprah show for an entire hour, and the rest is history. Rich Dad Poor Dad has become the #1 personal finance book in history, and about 40 million books from the Rich Dad series have been sold worldwide. Was there really a rich dad? Millions of people have asked if there really was a rich dad. To answer this question, you can listen to Mike, the Rich Dad's son, when he was a guest on the Rich Dad radio show. You can listen to that show by going to richdadradio.com. Rich Dad Graduate School. Rich Dad Poor Dad was written as simply as possible so that every person could understand my Rich Dad's lessons. For those who want to learn more, as part of the 20-year celebration, I have written Why the Rich Are Getting Richer. What is financial education, really? Why the Rich Are Getting Richer explains in more detail and clarity what the rich dad taught his son and me about money and investing. Why the Rich Are Getting Richer is Rich Dad Poor Dad for graduate students. It is the graduate school for rich dad students.
A warning and an invitation. Although I have tried to keep Why the Rich Are Getting Richer as simple as possible, what the rich really do is not simple, nor is it easy to understand. What the rich do requires real financial education, which is not taught in our schools. I suggest that you first read Rich Dad Poor Dad. After that, if you want to learn more, then maybe it begins with a life and a person. Rich Dad Poor Dad. Introduction. I had 2 dads, so I had the option of 2 opposing viewpoints, one from a rich man and one from a poor man. I had 2 dads, one rich and one poor. One was highly educated and intelligent. He was a PhD and completed a 4-year undergraduate course in 2 years. After that, he went on to study at Stanford University, the University of Chicago, and Northwestern University, of course, on a full scholarship. The second dad couldn't even pass the 8th grade. Both were successful in their professions. Both worked hard their entire lives. Both earned a lot of money. But one always struggled financially, and the other later became one of the richest people in Hawaii. One left millions of dollars for his family, charities, and church upon his death, while the other left unfinished bills that needed to be paid. Both were strong, charming, and influential. Both gave me advice, but they didn't advise me to do the same things. Both put a lot of emphasis on education, but they didn't suggest the same curriculum to study. If I had only one dad, I might have accepted or rejected his advice. Having 2 dads gave me the option of opposing viewpoints, one from a rich man and another from a poor man. Instead of accepting or rejecting either viewpoint, I would think deeply about what they said, compare them, and then choose my own option. The problem was that the rich dad wasn't rich at that time, and the poor dad wasn't poor at that time. Both were starting their careers and were struggling financially and familially. However, their views on money were extremely different.
For example, one dad would say, "The love of money is the root of all evil," while the other dad would say, "The lack of money is the root of all evil."
The strong but different advice from both of them would confuse me a lot in my childhood. Like a good boy, I wanted to listen to them and act accordingly. The problem was that the two dads didn't say the same things. There was a huge difference in their viewpoints, especially on the matter of money. This would confuse me a lot, but it also sparked my curiosity. I would think for a long time about what each of them said and why they said it. In my free time, I would mostly think about this and ask myself the question, why did he say that? Then I would ask the same question about the things the other dad said. I love both, so I was forced to think and ultimately choose a method of thinking for myself. In this process, choosing an option for myself proved to be very valuable in the future, which would not have been possible by simply accepting or rejecting any viewpoint. The rich get richer, the poor stay poor, and the middle class drown in debt. One reason for this is that the subject of money is taught at home, not in school. Most of us learn about money from our parents. What can poor parents teach their children about money? They just say, go to school and study hard. Maybe the child finishes their studies with great grades, but their financial programming and mindset will still be like a poor person. Unfortunately, the subject of money is not taught in schools. This is largely because the highly educated politicians and government officials who are making financial decisions have little to no training in the subject of money. Today, I often wonder what will happen when soon there will be millions and millions of people among us who will need financial and medical assistance. They will be dependent on their families or the government for financial assistance. What will happen when Medicare and Social Security money runs out? How will the country survive if the task of teaching children about money is left to parents, most of whom are either already poor or on their way to becoming poor? Because I had two influential dads, I learned from both of them. I had to think about the advice of each dad, and by doing so, I gained very valuable knowledge about how a person's thoughts affect their life.
A statement and a question. The rich dad often reminded me that there is a big difference between a statement and a question. A statement is a declaration, while a question forces you to think. My soon-to-be rich dad would explain to me how saying "I can't afford it" makes your brain stop working. On the other hand, asking the question "How can I afford it" makes your brain active. This didn't mean that you would buy everything you liked, but rather that he was interested in exercising his brain, which he considered to be the most powerful computer in the world. He would say, "My brain's power increases every day because I exercise it. The stronger it gets, the more money I earn." He believed that automatically saying "I can't afford it" was a sign of mental laziness. Although both dads worked hard, I noticed that financially, one was in the habit of keeping his brain dormant, and the other was in the habit of exercising his brain. As a result, in the long run, one dad started to become financially stronger, and the other started to become weaker. Understand it like this. One person goes to the gym regularly and exercises, while the other sits on the sofa and watches TV. What will be the result? Just as proper physical exercise increases your chances of staying healthy, proper mental exercise increases your chances of getting rich. My two dads had different viewpoints, and this affected their way of thinking. One dad thought that the rich should pay more tax so that the poor could benefit. The other dad would say, tax punishes productive people and rewards unproductive people. One dad would advise, study hard so you can get a good job at a good company. The other dad would give this advice, study hard so you can start your own company. One dad had a ban on talking about money at the dinner table. One would say, where money is concerned, play it safe, don't take risks. The other would say, learn to manage risks. One dad believed, our house is our biggest investment and our biggest asset. The other dad believed, my house is a liability, and if your house is your biggest investment, then you are in a crisis.
Both would pay their bills on time, but one would pay his bills first, while the other would pay his bills last. One dad thought that the company or government should take care of you and your needs. He was always worried about salary increases, retirement plans, medical benefits, sick leave, number of holidays, and other benefits. He was influenced by his two uncles who had joined the Army, and after 20 years of active service, they had earned a lifetime retirement and rights package. He also praised the medical benefits and other facilities given by the Army to retired employees. He also liked the long career tenure available at the university. Many times, the idea of lifelong job security and benefits seemed more important than the job itself. He would often say, "I have worked very hard for the government, so I deserve these kinds of benefits." The other dad believed entirely in financial self-reliance. He was against the mentality of being opportunistic or having a sense of entitlement, and would say that this mentality makes people weak and financially dependent. He put a lot of emphasis on being financially capable. One dad would struggle to save a few dollars, while the other would create investments.
One dad taught me how to write an impressive resume or biodata to find a good job, while the other taught me how to write strong business and financial plans so that I could give jobs to others. Having two strong dads gave me the opportunity to analyze how different ways of thinking have different effects on life. I noticed that people actually shape their lives with their thoughts. For example, my poor dad would always say, "I can never be rich," and in the future, his prediction came true. On the other hand, my rich dad always considered himself rich. He would say things like, "I'm rich, and rich people don't do that." Even when he was on the verge of bankruptcy after a big financial setback, he would still call himself a rich man. In his support, he would say, "There's a difference between being poor and being broke. Being broke is temporary. Being poor is permanent." My poor dad would say, "I'm not interested in money," or "money isn't important." My rich dad would always say, "Money is a form of power." The power of our thoughts can never be measured, nor can their full impact be understood. However, even as a young boy, I realized I needed to focus on my thoughts and my expression. I noticed that my poor dad wasn't poor because he earned less money. His salary was quite good. He was poor because of his thoughts and his actions. Having two strong dads made me very careful and aware as a young boy about which thoughts to accept and whose advice to follow, my rich dad's or my poor dad's. Although both of them considered education and learning very important, they had different views on what should be learned. One wanted me to study hard, get a degree, and find a good job to earn money. He wanted me to study for a profession or to become a lawyer or an accountant and get an MBA from a business school. The other dad encouraged me to study to become rich so I could understand how money works and learn how to make it work for me. "I don't work for money," he would often say. I decided to follow my rich dad's advice on money and learn from him. This also meant deciding to ignore my poor dad's advice, even though he had a high college degree. The Lesson of Robert Frost. Robert Frost is my favorite poet. While I love many of his poems, The Road Not Taken is my most cherished. I apply its lesson almost every day.
The road not taken. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day.
Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Over the years, I've often reflected on Robert Frost's poem. The decision not to follow my highly educated dad's advice and viewpoint about money was painful, but it was a decision that set the direction of my life. Once I made the decision about whose advice to follow, my financial education began. My rich dad taught me for 30 years until I was 39 years old. Then he stopped teaching because he realized I had learned everything and fully understood what he had so often tried to pound into my thick skull. Money is a form of power, but financial education is even more powerful. Money comes and goes, but if you know how money works, you can control it and begin to build wealth. Positive thinking alone doesn't work. This is because most people went to school and college, but they never learned how money works, so they spend their whole lives working for money. When my education began, I was only 9 years old, so the lessons my rich dad taught me were simple. In fact, he had only 6 main lessons, which he repeated for 30 years. This book is about those 6 lessons, told as simply as my rich dad taught them to me. Remember, the point of these lessons isn't just to provide answers. They're meant to be a guide that will help you and your children become richer no matter what happens in this constantly changing and uncertain world. Chapter 1, Lesson 1. Rich people don't work for money. The poor and the middle class work for money. The rich don't work for money. The rich make money work for them. Teddy, can you tell me how to get rich? My dad put down the evening newspaper. Son, why do you want to get rich? Because today Jimmy's mom came in their new Cadillac and they're going to their beach house for the weekend. She took 3 of his friends but didn't take Mike and me. They told us we weren't invited because we're poor. They said that? My dad asked in disbelief. Yes, they did, I replied, hurt.
My dad nodded in silence. He put his glasses back on his nose and went back to reading the newspaper. I stood there waiting for an answer. This was 1956. I was 9 years old. Coincidentally, I attended the same public school as the children from wealthy families. The plantation managers and other wealthy people in the colony, like doctors, businessmen, and bankers, sent their children to this primary school. After 6th grade, their children were usually sent to private school. Since my family lived on this side of the street, I went to this school. If I'd lived on the other side of the street, I would have gone to a different school, where children from families like mine went. After 6th grade, I would have had to go to the public intermediate and high schools with these kids. There were no private schools for them or for me. My dad finally put down the newspaper. I knew he was thinking about something. Look, son, he began slowly, if you want to be rich, you need to learn how to make money. I asked, how do I make money? He laughed and said, look, son, use your brain. That's when I understood his true meaning. That's all I can tell you, or I don't know the answer, so don't bother me. The next morning, I told my best friend Mike what my dad had said. As far as I knew, only Mike and I were the poor kids at that school. Mike was also at this school by coincidence. Someone had drawn a dividing line for the school and the colony, and that's why we ended up at the rich kids' school. To be honest, we weren't very poor, but we felt poor because all the other boys had new baseball gloves, new bikes, everything new. Our parents provided us with all the basic necessities like food, clothes, and a house, but that was it. My dad would say, if you want something, work for it. We wanted a lot of things, but there weren't many jobs available for 9-year-old boys. Mike asked,
"So what are we going to do to make money?" "I don't know," I said, "but will you be my partner?" He agreed, and that Saturday morning, Mike became my first business partner.
We spent the whole morning until noon thinking about how to make money. Sometimes we thought about those rich kids having fun at Jimmy's beach house, which made us a little sad. But that sadness was good because it motivated us to think of ways to make money. Finally, at noon, a light bulb suddenly went off in our heads. It was an idea Mike had found in a science book he had read. Excited, we shook hands, and now our partnership had a business. For the next few weeks, Mike and I ran around the neighborhood, knocking on doors and asking neighbors if they could save their used toothpaste tubes for us. Surprisingly, most adults laughed and said yes. A few asked what we were going to do with them. We would reply, "We can't tell you. It's a business secret." Weeks went by, and my mother's frustration grew. The place we had chosen to collect our raw materials was next to her washing machine. It was a brown cardboard box that had once held ketchup bottles. Now our small pile of toothpaste tubes in it was growing. Finally, my mother's patience ran out. The sight of the neighbor's dirty, bent, used toothpaste tubes was driving her crazy. She asked, "What are you two doing? And I don't want to hear that it's a business secret again. Clean up this junk right now or I'll throw it out." Mike and I begged her for some time. We told her we would have enough tubes soon and then we start production. We told her we were waiting for 2 or 3 neighbors whose toothpaste tubes were about to run out and were supposed to bring them to us. Mom gave us 1 week. The date to start production had come sooner than planned, and the pressure was on. My first partnership was in danger because my own mother had given us an eviction notice. It was Mike's job to tell the neighbors to finish their toothpaste quickly. He also told them that their dentist also believed they should brush more often during the day. I got busy perfecting the production process. One day, my dad came home with a friend. He saw 2 9-year-old boys in full production mode on the porch. Fine white powder was scattered all around. On a long table, there were small milk cartons from school, and our family's hibachi grill was burning at maximum heat with red-hot coals. Dad walked carefully. He had to park the car at the start of the porch because the production process was blocking the car's space. When he and his friend came closer, they saw a steel pot placed on the coals where the toothpaste tubes were melting. At that time, toothpaste didn't come in plastic tubes. The tubes were made of lead. So, after burning off the paint, we would put the tubes in the small steel pot. They would melt and turn into liquid. We were pouring this molten lead into a small hole we had made in a milk carton. The milk carton was filled with plaster of Paris. The white powder scattered around was nothing but plaster of Paris. In a hurry, I had kicked my bag, which made the whole area look like a snowstorm had just hit.
Reflection and personal questions. If you don't like some of the answers you're giving, ask yourself if you're ready to change. Take on the challenge of changing your mindset and way of thinking. When did your financial education begin? Was it from this book or another source? What was your reaction when you first read Robert's definitions of assets and liabilities? What was your reaction when he said a house isn't an asset? Did you consider your house to be an asset? When he fully explained his argument, did your idea change? Which cash flow pattern most closely resembles your life? Is there anything besides your house that you considered an asset but later proved to be a liability? Do you agree with this statement? What story do the numbers in your life tell? Has there ever been a time in your life that seemed like a positive achievement, like a promotion or pay raise, but it didn't lead to the expected balance sheet results? If you stopped working today, how long could you survive? Does that number surprise or scare you?
Most of the MBA students thought Ray was asking the question as a joke. No one answered, so Ray asked again, "What do you think? What business am I in?" The students laughed again, and finally a brave young man said loudly, "Ray, who in the world doesn't know you're in the hamburger business?" Ray smiled. "I knew you would say that." He paused and then quickly emphasized, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not in the hamburger business. My business is real estate." As my friend said, Ray explained his viewpoint in great detail. Ray knew that the core of the business plan was to sell hamburger franchises, but he didn't take his eyes off the location of each franchise.
He knew that the land and its location were the most important components for the success of each franchise. Basically, the person who was buying a franchise of Ray Kroc's company was also buying the land underneath it. Today, McDonald's is the largest owner of real estate on Earth, with more land than even the Catholic Church. McDonald's has the most valuable intersections and corners in America and around the world. My friend considers this one of the most important lessons of his life. Today, he owns a car wash garage, but his business is the land under that garage. Previously, you saw that we showed with diagrams that most people work hard for everyone else except themselves. They first work hard for the company owners, then they work hard for the government through taxes, and finally, they work hard for the bank that owns their mortgage. When I was young, there was no McDonald's in our neighborhood, but my rich dad taught Mike and me the same lesson that Ray Kroc told at the University of Texas. This is the third secret of the rich. This secret is to focus on your own business. The most obvious reason for financial deficiency is that people work for someone else their whole lives. That's why many people have nothing to show for it after working their whole lives. The main goal of our current education system is to create academic qualifications to get a good job. The entire education system focuses on preparing children for this. Their lives will revolve around their salary, or, as mentioned earlier, their income column. Many students will study to become engineers, scientists, chefs, police officers, painters, writers, and so on. These professional qualifications give them the additional ability to get a job and work for money. But there's a big difference between your profession and your own business. I often ask people, "What is your own business?" And they will say, "Oh, I'm a banker." Then I ask them, "Do they own the bank?" Usually their answer is, "No, I work there." In this example, they considered their profession and their own business to be the same. Their profession might be a banker, but they don't have their own business. The problem with school and college is that you often become the person you study about. That is, if you study cooking, you become a chef. If you study law, you become a lawyer. And studying auto mechanics makes you a mechanic. The mistake of becoming what you study is that most people forget to focus on their own business. They spend their lives looking after someone else's business and making them rich. To get financial security, a person should focus on their own business. Your business is not your income. It revolves around your asset column. As mentioned before, the first rule is to know the difference between an asset and a liability and buy assets. Rich people focus on the asset column, while everyone else focuses on their income statement. So we often hear things like, "I need a pay raise. If only I got a promotion. I'm going to college to get a little more training so I can get a better job. I'm going to work overtime. Maybe I need to find another job." This kind of extra money will only be useful if it is used to buy assets that are sources of income. Most poor and middle-class people are financially conservative, which means I can't take risks. The basic reason for this is that they don't have a financial foundation. They have to stick with their jobs and play it safe. When layoffs became commonplace, millions of employees learned that their biggest so-called asset, their house, was eating them alive.
Their asset was consuming their money every month. Their car, which was their second asset, was also chewing them up raw. The $1,000 golf clubs in the garage were no longer worth $1,000. Without job security, they now had no shelter. The things they thought were assets couldn't help them during a financial crisis. I think most of us have filled out loan applications when buying a house or a car. It's always interesting to look at the net worth column, because in it we find out what things are considered assets in banking and accounting. Once I wanted a loan, but my financial situation didn't look very good at that time. So to increase the numbers in the asset column, I also included my new golf clubs, my paintings, books,
electronics, Armani suits, watches, shoes, and other things. My loan application was rejected because I had too much investment in real estate. The loan approval committee didn't like that I earned so much money from rent. They wanted to know why I didn't have a salaried regular job. They had no objection to the Armani suits, golf clubs, or painting collection. When you can't be molded into the usual mold, life often becomes difficult. I shiver every time. Whenever I hear from someone that their net worth is $1 million or $100,000, net worth is not the correct measure, and the main reason for this is that when you start selling your assets, you have to pay tax on the profit. Many people fall into deep financial problems if their income is low. To raise money, they sell their assets, but their personal assets are usually sold for much less than the amount written on their balance sheet. On the other hand, if there is a profit from selling the asset, it is also taxed, which means the government takes its share again and reduces the amount raised to get out of debt. That's why I say that someone's net worth is often less than their estimation. Start focusing on your own business. Keep your day job, but start buying real assets. Don't buy liabilities or personal items that lose value once you bring them home. The moment you drive a new car out of the showroom, its price drops by about 25%. That is, it's not a real asset, although your banker lets you write it on the asset list. As soon as I started playing with my new $400 Golf titanium driver, its value dropped to $150. Keep expenses low, reduce liabilities, and work hard to build a solid asset foundation. For young people who have not yet left home, it is important that their parents teach them the difference between assets and liabilities. Tell them to start building a solid asset column before they leave home. Get married, buy a house, have children, and get stuck in risky financial situations. Stick with a job and buy everything on debt. I see many young couples who, after marriage, get caught up in a lifestyle that will not let them get out of debt for most of their working years. When the last child grows up and leaves home, the parents feel that they have not prepared enough for retirement. Now they start a campaign to save a little money, but then their own parents get sick and new responsibilities come upon them. What kind of assets do I recommend you or your children collect? In my world, true assets fall into these classes. Businesses that don't require my presence. I certainly own them, but other people run them. If I have to work there too, then it's not a business, it's a job. Stocks, bonds, income-generating real estate, notes, that is IOUs, intellectual property, that is royalties for music, screenplays, and patents, etc. Anything else of value that generates income or appreciates in value and has a ready market. Acquire the assets you love. Robert loves real estate, so he spends most of his time thinking about and acquiring it. If you don't like real estate, don't invest in it. Robert also loves shares in small companies, especially startups, because he is an entrepreneur himself. Some people are scared by the risk of such low-capital companies, but Robert sees them as a place to create wealth.
His strategy is to get out of those shares within a year. On the other hand, his real estate strategy is to start small and, while deferring taxes on the profit, sell them to buy even bigger properties and hold the real estate for less than 7 years. Even while working for the Marine Corps and Xerox, Robert focused on his own business. He kept his day job but was active in his asset column, trading in real estate and small-town businesses. He doesn't encourage anyone to start a new company unless they really want to. I know how much of a hassle it is to run a company, so I don't want anyone to fall into that trouble. There are many opportunities when people can't find a job, and at that time, starting their own company seems like the best solution. But always remember that your chances of success are very low.
9 out of 10 companies fail in the first 5 years. Of the companies that survive the first 5 years, 9 out of 10 of them eventually fail. So I would only recommend it if you have a strong and real desire to own your own company. Otherwise, keep your day job and focus on your own work. When I say focus on your own work, I mean to strengthen and hold your asset column. Once a dollar goes in, never let it go out. Think of it this way. When a dollar goes into your asset column, it becomes your employee. The best thing about money is that it works 24 hours a day and can work for generations. Keep your day job, be a great, hard-working employee, but keep growing your asset column. When your cash flow increases, you can buy luxury items. An important fact about this is that rich people buy luxury items last, while poor and middle-class people tend to buy luxury items first. Poor and middle-class people often buy luxury items like big houses, diamonds, fur coats, jewelry, or boats because they want to look rich. They do look rich, but in reality, they just sink deeper into the quicksand of debt. People with old money, that is, those who have been rich for a long time, build their asset column first. Then, the income generated from the asset column buys luxury items for them. Poor and middle-class people buy luxury items at the cost of their hard-earned money and their children's inheritance. True luxury is the reward for investing in a real asset and building it. For example, when extra money started coming to my wife Kim and me from our apartment house, she bought a Mercedes for herself. She didn't work extra or take any risk for it because the apartment house, not her, bought the car. However, she had to wait for 4 years while the real estate investment portfolio was growing and generating enough extra cash flow to buy the car. But the luxury of the Mercedes was a true reward because it proved that she knew how to grow her asset column. Now that that car is not just a beautiful car to her, it means more than that. It means she used her financial intelligence to buy it. In contrast, most people buy a new car or other luxury items on loan based on emotion. Maybe they're bored and need a new toy. Buying luxury items on loan often makes the person eventually get bored with that item because the loan becomes a financial burden. When you have spent time investing and working on your own business, you are ready to learn the biggest secret of the rich. That is, the secret that puts the rich far ahead of the rest of the people. Study Session, Chapter 3, Third Lesson. Focus on your own business. Summary. Robert's friend listened to a lecture by Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, at the University of Texas in Austin in 1974. Later, Ray agreed to go with the students to their favorite place for a beer. He asked the students what business they thought he was in. At first, the students laughed, and then they replied that he was in the business of selling hamburgers. But Ray told them that he was not in the hamburger business, but in the real estate business. He knew that the land and location of each franchise played the most important role in its success. Today, McDonald's is the single largest owner of real estate on earth, owning the most valuable corners and intersections around the world. Robert's friend listened to that lesson carefully, and today he owns many car servicing centers, but his business is the real estate under those car servicing centers. Many people work for others, their employers, the government, and the bank. Ray Kroc and Rich Dad knew the richest secret number 3. Focus on your own business. Don't waste your whole life working for someone else. There's a big difference between your profession and your business. Robert often asks people, "What's your business?" And they reply, "Oh, I'm a banker." Then he asks them if they own the bank, and they usually reply, No, I work there." In this way, they spend their whole life making others rich instead of themselves.
Focusing on your business doesn't mean starting a company, although for some people it might. Instead, your business revolves around your asset column, not your income. A promotion or a good job will only help you become more financially secure if the extra money is used to buy income-generating assets. Most poor and middle-class people are financially conservative. The main reason for this is that they don't have a financial foundation. They have to stick to their jobs and play it safe. They can't take risks, and when hard times come, the things people considered assets don't help them survive a financial crisis. The value of that car decreases a lot. The same thing happens to golf clubs. The things that the bank allows a person to put on the asset list on their financial statement are often not real assets. Robert was once denied a loan because the bank didn't like that he was earning so much money from rent. The bank was also worried that he didn't have a regular job. But when Robert included suits, an art collection, and other personal items in the asset list, the employees had no problem. Net worth is not the measure people think it is. Most of the so-called assets that people base their net worth on are not as valuable as they think, or if their value increases, the profit will be taxed. So Robert tells people to focus on their own business. Keep their day job, but start buying real assets, not liabilities or personal items that have no real value after you bring them home. Keep expenses low, reduce liabilities, and work hard to build a solid asset foundation. Parents need to teach this to their children before they leave home so they understand what true assets are, which will prevent them from getting caught in a life of debt. Robert says that real assets come in these classes. Businesses that don't require my presence. I certainly own them, but other people run them. If I have to work there too, then it's not a business, it's a job. Shares, bonds, income-generating real estate, notes, intellectual property, that is royalties from music, screenplays, and patents, etc. Anything else of value that generates income or appreciates in value and has a ready market. Acquire the assets you love. Robert loves real estate, so he spends most of his time thinking about and acquiring it. If you don't like real estate, don't invest in it. Robert also loves shares of small new companies because he is an entrepreneur himself. Some people are scared by the risk of such low-capital companies, but Robert sees them as a place to create wealth. His strategy is to get out of the investment within a year. On the other hand, his real estate strategy is to start small and, while deferring taxes on the profit, sell them to buy even bigger properties and hold the real estate for less than 7 years. Even while working for Marines and Xerox, Robert focused on his own business. He kept his day job, but was active in his asset column, trading in real estate and small-town businesses. He doesn't encourage anyone to start a new company unless they want to. If not, he advises them to keep their day job and focus on their business. Strengthen and hold your asset column. When cash flow increases, people can get involved in luxury items, but only if the cash flow supports them. Build the asset column and then buy luxury items with the income generated from those assets. Left hemisphere moment. When assets start giving enough income to buy luxury items, you can buy them. Right hemisphere moment. Think creatively about what your business is. It's not your profession. Subconscious moment. Acquire the types of assets you love because you will take better care of them and have fun learning about them. What was Robert saying? Now is the time to think. Ask yourself what Robert is saying in this example and why he's saying it. You don't need to agree or disagree with Robert in this section. The goal is to understand what Robert is saying. Remember, this curriculum is designed to be collaborative and supportive. 2 brains are better than 1. If you don't understand what Robert is saying, don't hesitate. Ask for help. Take time to talk about each example until you understand it. To be financially secure, a person needs to focus on their own business. Rich people focus on their asset columns, while everyone else focuses on their income statements. Financial struggle is often a direct result of people spending their whole lives working for someone else. Many people at the end of their careers will have nothing to show for their efforts. Net worth is not correct. A major reason for this is that the moment you start selling your assets, the profit is taxed. Once a dollar goes in, never let it go out. Think of it this way. When a dollar goes into your asset column, it becomes your employee. The best thing about money is that it works 24 hours a day and can work for generations. An important difference is that rich people buy luxury items last, while poor and middle-class people tend to buy luxury items first. Poor and middle-class people buy luxury items at the cost of their hard-earned money and their children's inheritance. Now, with the understanding of what Robert said in this chapter, it's time to apply the stories mentioned in it to yourself and your life. Ask yourself the questions given below and discuss them with your study partner. Be honest with yourself and your partner. If you don't like some of the answers you're giving, ask yourself, are you ready to change? Accept the challenge of changing your thinking and mindset. What is your profession and what is your business? What is the difference between them? What things did you count in your net worth before reading this chapter? How do you see them now? Are the assets you are acquiring something you love? If not, how can you change it? Fourthly, was there a time when you bought a luxury item that your cash flow didn't support? When did you buy something when the cash flow made that purchase seem logical? Compare how you felt during and after these two situations. Is there someone in your family who spent their whole life working for others and ended up with nothing left? If you could, what advice would you give them? Glossary. Bond. A type of debt in which the issuer formally borrows from the bondholder and promises to return the principal and interest on a specific future date, known as maturity.
Entrepreneur. A person who creates a system to provide a product or service to earn profit. Entrepreneurs are willing to pursue opportunities and take risks and are considered fundamentally important in a capitalist society. Financial statement. A statement of your income, expenses, assets, and liabilities. When you graduate from college, it's like your report card that your banker wants to see before giving you a loan. Stock. Capital raised by a corporation by issuing shares. History and power of taxes and corporations. My rich dad played the game skillfully, and he did it through corporations, which is the biggest secret of the rich. I remember being told the story of Robin Hood and his merry men gang at school. My teacher described it as a wonderful story of a romantic hero who took money from the rich and distributed it among the poor. On the other hand, my rich dad didn't see Robin Hood as a hero. He considered Robin Hood a criminal. Even though Robin Hood's era has passed, his followers are still alive today. I often hear people say, "Why don't the rich pay for it?" Or, "The rich should be taxed more and distributed among the poor." This Robin Hood fantasy of taking from the rich and distributing among the poor has proven to be the most painful for the poor and middle class. Because of this Robin Hood ideal, such a huge tax burden has been placed on the middle class. The truth is, the rich are not taxed at all. The money for the welfare of the poor is mainly given by the middle class, especially the high-income middle class. To fully understand taxes, we need to know their historical background. Although my highly educated dad was an expert in academia and history, my rich dad considered himself an expert in the history of taxes. Rich Dad told me and Mike that there were no taxes in England or America before. Sometimes temporary taxes were levied to cover the cost of war. The king or president would just announce it, and everyone would be encouraged to give their part. In Britain, taxes were imposed for the war against Napoleon from 1799 to 1816. In America, taxes were imposed from 1861 to 1865 to cover the cost of the Civil War. In 1874, England imposed a permanent income tax on its citizens.
In 1913, with the approval of the 16th Amendment to the American Constitution, the income tax also became permanent in America. At one time, Americans were anti-tax. The famous Boston Harbor Tea Party incident, which sparked the Revolutionary War, happened because of the excessive tax on tea. It took about 50 years for both England and America to make the idea of a regular income tax acceptable to the public. From these historical dates, we don't know that these two taxes were initially imposed only on the rich. Rich Dad wanted me and Mike to never forget this. He explained that the idea of tax became popular, and it was voted for with the support of the majority of people. The government's appetite for money grew once the poor and middle class got a taste of it. Rich Dad said, "Your dad and I are at opposite poles. He is a government official, and I am a capitalist. We get money because of our opposite behavior, and our standards for measuring success are also different. He gets money to spend and to give people jobs. The more he spends and the more people he gives jobs to, the bigger his organization becomes. A big organization is respected in the government. On the other hand, in my company, the fewer people I hire and the less money I spend, the more my investors respect me. This is why I don't like government people. So the government needs more tax dollars."
My highly educated dad truly believed that the government should help the people. He liked John F. Kennedy very much, especially the idea of the Peace Corps. He liked this idea so much that he and my mom both worked for the Peace Corps and trained volunteers going to Malaysia, Thailand, and the Philippines. They always tried to get extra grants and increase the budget so they could hire more people in both the education department and the Peace Corps. Since I was 10 years old, my rich dad would tell me that government employees are a group of lazy thieves. Around the same time, my poor dad would tell me that the rich are greedy and bad people who should give more money to the government. There were valid arguments for both opinions. It was very difficult for me to come back to a top government official after working for a big capitalist in the city. It was not easy to decide which father's words to believe. But when you study the history of taxes, an interesting aspect comes to light. As I said, tax could only be effective because people believed in the Robin Hood theory of economics: take from the rich and distribute among everyone else. The problem was that the government's hunger for money grew so much that soon it was time to impose taxes on the middle class as well, and from there it started to go down. On the other hand, the rich saw this as an opportunity because they didn't play by the same rules that the general public did. The rich knew about corporations, which became popular during sea voyages. The rich used corporations to limit the risk to their assets on every sea voyage. For every voyage, the rich would put their money into a corporation. Then the corporation would hire sailors to go on a journey to the New World in search of wealth. If the ship sank, the sailors' lives would be lost, but the rich would only lose the amount of money they invested in that specific voyage. Now, this diagram shows how your personal income is outside of your tax statement and balance sheet. Due to the knowledge of the legal corporate structure, the rich are actually in a much more advantageous position than the poor and middle class. Because I was taught by two fathers, one a socialist and the other a capitalist, I quickly understood that the capitalist's philosophy had more economic knowledge. I felt that socialists ultimately punished themselves due to a lack of financial knowledge. No matter how much the crowd chanting "take from the rich" tried, the rich always found a way to defeat them. This is why the middle class has been taxed. The rich are smarter than the intellectuals just because they understand the power of money, a subject that is not taught in school. How did the rich defeat the intellectual class? Take from the rich, once the tax was passed, money started coming into the government treasury. Initially, people were happy about this, and the money went to government employees as salaries and pensions. To the rich, it came from government contracts received through their factories. The government had a lot of money, but the problem was its financial management. The goal of every government department is not to save the money allocated to it, but to spend the whole thing. If you can't spend your allocated money, there's a risk of it being reduced in the next budget. In such a case, you are definitely considered less efficient. On the other hand, business people are rewarded for saving money, and their efficiency is praised. When this cycle of increasing government spending continued, the demand for money increased, and some true capitalists used their financial knowledge to find a way to escape from this idea of tax the rich. They took refuge in corporations. People who have never created a corporation don't even know that there is no such thing as a corporation. A corporation is just a file folder with some legal documents kept in a lawyer's office and registered with a state government agency. It is not a big building, a factory, or a group of people. A corporation is just a legal document that creates a legal body without a soul. Using this, the rich's assets are secured again. The corporation became popular because the income tax rate for a corporation is lower than the personal income tax rate. Also, a corporation is allowed to spend some expenses before paying tax. This fight between the rich and the poor has been going on for centuries. This war is fought whenever and wherever laws are made, and it will continue forever. The problem is that the losers in this are ignorant. They wake up every morning, go to work hard, and pay taxes. If they just understood how the rich play, they could play it the same way. Then they too could be free from a lack of money and walk on the path of financial freedom. This is why I'm always surprised when I hear a parent advise their child to go to school to get a safe job. A person who has no knowledge of money or financial education cannot survive in any situation, no matter how safe their job is. Today, an average American employee works for the government for 5 to 6 months just to pay their taxes. In my opinion, this is a very long time. The harder you work, the more tax you have to pay to the government. Instead, they find a way to reduce their tax burden. For this, they hire smart lawyers and accountants. For this, they persuade politicians to either change the law or create legal loopholes. They use their wealth to change the situation. There are many ways to save taxes in American tax law. Most of these ways are open to every person, but only the rich find them because they are focusing on their own work. For example, 1031 means Section 1031 of the Internal Revenue Code. It says that the seller doesn't have to pay tax on the profit from selling a house or land if they buy a more expensive house or land. Real estate is a capital investment that is very beneficial in terms of taxes. As long as you keep selling old real estate and buying more expensive real estate, you won't have to pay tax on the profit. People who don't take advantage of these tax benefits given under the law lose a huge opportunity to grow their asset column.
The poor and middle class don't have that much wealth. They sit with their arms folded and let the government needle prick their arm to give blood. Today, I am constantly shocked by the number of people who pay more tax or take fewer deductions, the reason for which is simply that they are afraid of the government. I have some friends whose businesses were closed and destroyed due to a government mistake. I am aware of this, but if you pay the price of working from January to May to escape this fear, then in my opinion, it is a high enough price. My poor dad never fought back. My rich dad didn't either. He just played the game more cleverly, and he did it through corporations, which is the biggest secret of the rich. Do you remember the first lesson I learned from my rich dad? I was 9 years old then and waiting for his call. I was sitting in his office and waiting for his call. The immense power that comes with money requires the right knowledge to maintain and multiply. Without this knowledge, the world keeps pushing you around. Rich Dad would remind me and Mike again and again that the most frightening person, boss or supervisor, is not but the tax department. If you don't resist, the tax department will always collect more and more tax from you. The first lesson of making money work for you instead of working for money is about power. If you work for money, you hand over power to your employer. If money works for you, then you keep the power with you and control it. Once we got this knowledge about how much power there is in making money work for us, he wanted us to be financially smart and not allow anything or anyone to push us around. If you are ignorant, you can be easily intimidated. If you know what you are talking about, you have a chance to fight back. This is why they gave so much money to smart tax accountants and lawyers. If you know you are right, you are not afraid to fight back, even if you are fighting with Robin Hood and his Merry Men gang. My highly educated dad always encouraged me to find a good job in a big corporation. He would calculate the profit of climbing the corporate ladder. He didn't understand that by becoming completely dependent on a company employee's salary, I would become an obedient cow whose milk anyone could milk whenever they wanted to. When I told my rich dad my dad's advice, he just laughed. He just said, "Why not become the owner of the ladder?" As a child, I didn't understand what Rich Dad meant by owning my own corporation. It was an idea that seemed impossible and frightening. Although I was excited about this idea, my inexperience was not letting me imagine that someday adults would work in the company I created. The important thing is that if I had not my rich dad, I would probably have followed my highly educated dad's advice. It was because of Rich Dad's repeated reminders that the idea of my own corporation stayed alive and kept leading me on a different path. At the age of 15-16, I knew that I would not go on the path that my highly educated dad was advising. I didn't know how I would do it, but I was determined that I would not go in the direction that most of my classmates were going. This decision changed my life. When I was about 25, I started seeing more wisdom in Rich Dad's advice. At that time, I had left the Marine Corps and was working at Xerox. I was getting a lot of money.
But whenever I saw my salary, I would also hear Rich Dad's voice in my ears. Who are you working for? Who are you making rich? In 1974, when I was an employee of Xerox, I created my first corporation and started focusing on my own work. I already had some assets in my asset column, but now I was determined to focus on making this column even bigger. Seeing the deductions from the salary, the advice given by my rich dad for years was showing more wisdom. Now I could see what my future would be like if I followed my highly educated dad's advice. Many employers think that if their employee focuses on their own work, it will be bad for their business. But in my case, the opposite happened. Focusing on my own work and concentrating on creating assets made me a better employee, because now I had a goal. I used to come early in the morning and work hard. I would earn as much money as possible so I could invest it in real estate. At that time, prices in Hawaii were rising fast, and there was a possibility of earning huge wealth. The more I felt that we were in the initial stage of a huge economic boom, the more Xerox machines I sold. The more machines I sold, the more money I earned, and of course, the more was deducted from my salary. I was so desperate to get out of the trap of being an employee that I worked even harder so I could invest more. By 1978, I had become one of the top 5 salespeople in the company. I was desperate to get out of the rat race. In less than 3 years, the situation was such that I was earning more from my real estate holding corporation than from Xerox. In my corporation, the money I was generating in my asset column was working for me. For that, I didn't need to knock on doors to sell photocopiers. I saw more wisdom in Rich Dad's advice. Soon, the cash flow from my properties became so high that my company bought my first Porsche car. The rest of the salespeople at Xerox thought I was spending my commission, but I wasn't doing anything like that. I was investing my commission column of assets. My money was working hard to make more money. Every dollar in my asset column was a great employee. It was working hard to make more employees, and it bought its boss a new Porsche. That too from pre-tax dollars. I started working harder for Xerox. The plan was working, and my Porsche was the proof. Using the lessons I learned from my rich dad, I managed to get out of the rat race at a young age. This was possible because of the great financial knowledge I got from my rich dad's teachings.
Without this financial knowledge, which I call financial intelligence or financial IQ, my path to financial freedom would have been more difficult. Now I teach others in the hope that they will benefit from my knowledge. I remind people that proficiency in financial IQ involves knowledge of 4 broad areas. Accounting. Accounting is financial literacy or the ability to read numbers. If you want to build an empire, this is an essential skill. The more money you're responsible for, the more nuanced knowledge you need, otherwise your empire will collapse like a house of cards. This is the left-brained part of the details. Financial literacy means the ability to read and understand financial statements so you can recognize the strengths and weaknesses of a business. Investing is the science of making money from money. It involves strategies and formulas that use the creative right-brained part. Understanding the market is the science of demand and supply. In addition to the fundamental or economic aspects of an investment, you need to know the technical side of the market, which is driven by emotion. He who understands the current market situation, tax benefits and protection can get rich faster than an employee or a small business owner. This makes as much difference as between a walking person and a flying person. In terms of long-term wealth, it makes a huge difference. Tax benefits. A corporation can do many things that an employee cannot. For example, it can spend before paying taxes. This is a field of expertise that is very exciting. Employees pay taxes on their earnings and run their expenses from the money that's left. An employee earns, spends as much money as they can, and if anything is left, they pay tax on that. This is one of the biggest loopholes in the tax law, and the rich use it to the fullest. Creating a corporation is easy and doesn't cost much money if your investment gives a good cash flow. For example, by owning your own corporation, you go to Hawaii for a vacation and have a board meeting there. This way, car payments, insurance, repairs, and health club memberships are included in the company's expenses. Most lunches or dinners taken in restaurants are also partial expenses. But all these expenses are done legally before paying taxes.
We live in a litigious society. Everyone wants to profit from your hard work. The rich hide most of their assets using corporations and trusts to avoid lawsuits and protect their wealth. Whenever someone makes a claim against a rich person, they find out that they are wearing legal armor and don't actually own anything. The rich control everything but own nothing. Poor and middle-class people try to own everything, so when a claim is made against them, they lose their property to the government or fancy citizens who claim on the rich. They learned it from the story of Robin Hood: take from the rich and give it to the poor. It is not the purpose of this book to explain the whole procedure of setting up a corporation, but I will say that if you own this kind of legal asset, collect more information about the benefits and protections a corporation provides as soon as possible. Many books have been written on this subject that will detail its benefits and also provide information on the steps required to form a corporation. Jared Soden's books describe the power of the personal corporation well. Financial IQ is actually a mixture of many plans and qualities. I would say it is a combination of the 4 technical skills mentioned earlier, from which basic financial intelligence is created. If you want huge wealth, the coordination of these skills will greatly increase your financial intelligence. In short, understand the owner of a corporation and the employee working for the corporation. Study Session, Chapter 4, Lesson 4, The Power of Taxes and Corporations. Summary. Many people consider Robin Hood a hero who took money from the rich and gave it to the poor. Rich Dad did not have this idea. He called Robin Hood a criminal. Although the popular notion is that the rich should pay more taxes and give money to the poor, the truth is that it is the middle class who bears the huge taxes, especially the educated, high-income middle class. How does this happen? To understand this, Robert has told a brief history of taxes. In England and America, there was basically no tax. Only occasional temporary taxes were levied for things like war. In 1874, England imposed a permanent income tax on its citizens. In America, the land where the Boston Tea Party resistance and the Revolutionary War were instigated due to tax on tea, the income tax became permanent due to the 16th Amendment in 1913.
The majority of people were in favor of these orders because the tax was initially imposed only against the rich, but later the situation changed. Although the purpose of the income tax was to punish the rich, in the end it started punishing the people who were in favor of it, the poor and the middle class.
Rich Dad explained that he and Poor Dad were like opposite poles. Poor Dad was a government employee, and if he spent his allocated money and hired people to make his organization bigger, he would be rewarded. But the fewer people Rich Dad hired and the less he spent, the more his investors respected him. And when the government expands, the amount of tax dollars needed to support it also increases. Poor Dad really believed that the government should help the people. He and Robert's mother worked in the Peace Corps, training volunteers to go to Malaysia, Thailand, and the Philippines. To hire more people, they always demanded more grants and budgets. It was a challenge for Robert that he works for one of the biggest capitalists in the city and then goes home to a top government official. It was not easy to know which father to trust, but when Robert studied the history of taxes, he learned an interesting thing. When the government's hunger for money increased, it soon started imposing taxes on the middle class as well, and from there it started going downwards. But the rich saw an opportunity because they play by different rules. The corporation, which became popular during the age of sea voyages, provided a way to escape from taxes. By understanding the legal corporate structure, the rich gained a huge advantage and were allowed to be smarter than the intellectuals. The government's ideology is that there should be no surplus of money. If you fail to spend your allocated money, you risk losing it in the next budget. On the other hand, businessmen are rewarded for saving money and their efficiency is appreciated. When the government maintained its ideology and continued to spend more money, more taxes were needed, this time on the middle class and finally on the poor. The corporation is just a legal document, which creates a legal entity. It is not a thing, it is not a factory or a collection of people. However, the income tax rate of a corporation is lower than the personal income tax rate. In addition, the corporation is allowed to make some expenses before paying taxes. All those people who go to the office for their jobs and pay taxes, if they understood how the rich play the game, they could also do the same. The problem is, the harder you work at a job, the more tax you have to pay to the government. Taxes ultimately punish the very people who lobbied on their behalf. Attempts to punish the rich are rarely successful because the rich shift their tax burden elsewhere. As long as you continue to buy expensive real estate, you don't have to pay tax on the profit. All those people who do not take advantage of these tax exemptions provided by law are missing a huge opportunity to strengthen their asset column. When Rich Dad was advising Robert, in those years he was trying to teach him that knowledge is power, and with that huge power comes money, which needs the right knowledge to protect and grow. Without this knowledge, the world will fool you from all sides. Tax officials are a kind of scary people who always want more. When Robert left the Marine Corps and started working for Xerox, he was disappointed to see a lot of tax deducted from his salary. This inspired him to create his first corporation in 1974. It encouraged him to work even harder at his day job to raise more money to invest in real estate. He became one of Xerox's best salespeople. In less than 3 years, he was earning more from his real estate holding corporation than he was working at Xerox. His company bought him the first Porsche car, which was proof that his plan was working. Thanks to the education he received from his rich dad, he was able to get out of the rat race at a young age, and he wants to help others do the same.
Wealthy Dad knew that failure would make them stronger and smarter than before. It wasn't that they wanted to lose, but rather that they knew themselves and how to handle defeat. They would turn that defeat into victory, which is why they were winners, and others were losers. This gave them the courage to cross the line where others would retreat. This is why I like the people of Texas so much. They would say they had turned a major failure into an inspiration. At the same time, they also turned it into a tourist destination that generates millions of dollars. But the thing that feels most meaningful to me today is this: Texans don't bury their failures. Instead, they are inspired by failure. They turn their failures into inspirational slogans. Failure inspires Texans to be winners. But this formula isn't just for Texans, it's the formula of all winners. I've already said that my repeatedly falling off my bike was part of learning to ride. They find inspiration for more study. From this, they get better. For those who are winners on the inside, losing inspires them. For those who are losers on the inside, they lose courage after a defeat. I like to repeat this quote from John D. Rockefeller. I always tried to turn every disaster into an opportunity. And as a Japanese American, I can say this. Many people say Pearl Harbor was America's mistake. I say it was a Japanese mistake. In the movie Tora, 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 a grim Japanese admiral tells his enthusiastic subordinates, I fear we have awakened a sleeping giant. Remember Pearl Harbor became an inspirational slogan. It turned America's massive loss into a cause for victory. This massive defeat gave America strength, and America quickly emerged as a world power. Failure inspires winners, and failure breaks the morale of losers. This is the biggest secret of winners. It's the secret that losers don't know. The biggest secret of winners is that failure inspires them to win, so they have no fear of losing. I want to repeat Frank Tarkenton's quote, "Winning means not fearing to lose." People like Frank Tarkenton don't fear losing because they know that there is more joy in winning than in losing. They hate losing, so they know that if they let themselves lose from within, it will hurt even more. There is a big difference between hating to lose and being afraid to lose. Most people are so afraid of losing money that they lose. They go bankrupt over a duplex. Financially, they play life at a very safe and very small level. They buy big houses and big cars, but they don't make big investments. 90% of the American public struggles with money. The main reason is that they play to avoid losing, not to win. They go to their financial planner, accountant, or stockbroker and buy a balanced portfolio. Most have a lot of cash, FDs, low-interest bonds, mutual funds, and shares of some companies. This is a safe and wise portfolio, but it's not a winner's portfolio. It's the portfolio of a person who is playing to avoid losing. Don't get me wrong, it's probably a better portfolio than the rest of the 70% of the population. How fearful this is, and it's better to have a safe portfolio than to not have one at all. Anyway, this is the best portfolio for the person who loves security. But playing defensively and balancing your investment portfolio is not the way successful investors play. If you have less money and you want to get rich, you need to be concentrated, not balanced.
Look at any successful person, and you will see that at the beginning, they were not balanced. Balanced people don't get anywhere. They stay in one place. To improve, you first have to be a little unbalanced. If you don't believe me, walk for yourself. Thomas Edison was not balanced. He was concentrated. Bill Gates was not balanced. He was concentrated. Donald Trump is concentrated. George Soros is concentrated. George Patton did not spread his tanks over a huge area. He concentrated them in one place and blew away the weak parts of the German army. In the case of the Maginot Line, the French spread their military power, and you know what happened to them. If you want to get rich, you have to be concentrated. Don't do what the poor and middle class do, putting a few eggs in many baskets. Instead, put many eggs in a few baskets and be concentrated. Keep moving in one direction until you succeed. If you hate losing, then play defensively because it will take time. But if you have the dream of freedom in your mind and the desire to get out of the rat race, then ask yourself the first question: how do I react to failure? If failure inspires you to win, then you should probably go down this path, but only probably. If failure makes you weak or causes you to become like that spoiled child who looks for a lawyer to sue every time something goes wrong, then play it defensively. Keep your day job or buy bonds or mutual funds. Remember, although these are relatively safer, there are still risks in these financial instruments. I'm mentioning Texas and Frank Tarkenton because it's easy to fill the asset column. Losers are afraid of failing, and failure can turn losers into winners. Remember the Alamo. Getting past pessimism is the name "The Sky is Falling." The sky is falling. Most of us know the story of the little chicken who ran around warning of doom. We all know many such people. There's a little chicken inside each of us. I'm not smart. I'm not good enough. So-and-so is better than me. Our doubts paralyze us. We play the what-if game. What if the economy collapses right after I invest? What if I lose control and can't repay the money on time? What if things don't go according to my plan? Or our friends and loved ones can also remind us of our flaws. They often say, "Why do you think you can do this? If this idea was so good, why hasn't someone else done it by now? It will never work. You don't know what you're talking about." These arrows of doubt are often so sharp that we don't even start working. Fear settles in our minds. Sometimes we can't even sleep. We can't take a step forward, so we stick with the safe things. As a result, opportunities pass us by. We watch life passes by and sit idly with our fearful hearts. We have all felt this at some point in our lives, some more than others.
Peter Lynch, the famous manager of the Fidelity Magellan Mutual Fund, used to call the sky is falling warnings noise, which we all hear. Noise is either generated inside our brains or comes from outside, often from friends, family, colleagues, and the media. Lynch recalls the 1950s, when the risk of nuclear war was so highly publicized in the newspapers that people started building bomb shelters and hoarding food and water. If they had invested that money intelligently in the stock market instead of building bomb shelters, they would probably be financially free today. When violence breaks out in a city, the sale of revolvers increases across the country. A person in Washington state dies from eating hamburger meat, after which the Arizona Department of Health orders all restaurants to thoroughly cook all kinds of meat. A pharmaceutical company shows people cold symptoms in a TV ad in February, which results in an increase in colds and an increase in the sale of that medicine. Most people are poor because in the world of investment, it's full of little chickens running around shouting, "The sky is falling, the sky is falling." And the words of the little chickens have more impact because a little chicken is hiding inside each of us. It often takes immense courage for rumors of destruction and words of despair to not create doubt and fear in your mind. But every intelligent investor knows that the worst-looking times are actually the best times to make money. When everyone else is too afraid to take a step, they pull the trigger and get rewarded. A few days ago, a friend named Richard came to Phoenix from Boston to meet Kim and me. He was very impressed with the work we had done in stocks and real estate. Real estate prices in Phoenix were in a slump. For 2 days, we showed him many real estate properties with great opportunities where, in our opinion, there was an excellent opportunity for cash flow and capital appreciation. Kim and I are not real estate agents. We are pure investors. After fixing a unit at a resort company, we called the agent who had sold that house to the resort that afternoon. The 2-bedroom house was priced at just $42,000, where such houses were selling for $65,000. He got a great deal. Excited, he bought it and went back to Boston. 2 weeks later, the agent called us to say that our friend had backed out. I quickly called to find out why. He just said that his neighbor had told him it was a bad deal because he was buying it at too high a price. I asked Richard if his neighbor was an investor. Richard denied this. When I asked Richard why he listened to his neighbor, he got defensive and just said he wanted to do more investigation. The real estate market in Phoenix turned, and a few years later, that small house started renting for $1,000 a month, $2,500 in the cold months. The price of the house had now increased to $95,000. Richard only had to make a $5,000 down payment, and his process of getting out of the rat race would have started. He hasn't done anything to this day. I wasn't surprised to see Richard back out. It's called buyer's remorse, and it affects all of us. The little chicken won, and the opportunity for freedom passed. Here's another example. I put a small part of my property in tax lien certificates instead of FDs. I earn 16% annually, which is definitely more than the bank's interest rate on FDs. The certificates are safer than real estate and are also protected by state law. And it's also better than most banks. They are safe because of the formula they are bought on. They just don't have liquidity, i.e. the convenience of selling instantly. So I consider them to be 2 to 7 year FDs. Whenever I tell someone how I keep my money, people tell me it's dangerous, especially when their own money is in FDs.
They tell me why I shouldn't do this. When I ask them where they got this knowledge, they cite a friend or an investment magazine. They have never done this work, but they are telling the person who is doing the work what he should not do. I expect a minimum income of 16%, but people full of doubt are ready to accept much more profit than that. Doubt proves to be expensive. I think this doubt and pessimism are what keep most people poor and force them to play defensively. The real world is waiting for you to get rich. Only your doubts have kept you poor. As I said, getting out of the rat race is technically easy. It doesn't require much education, but because of their doubts, most people remain inactive and can't get out of the rat race. Wealthy Dad used to say, "Pessimists never win." Uncontrolled doubt and fear make people pessimists. Pessimists criticize, while winners analyze. Wealthy Dad made it clear that criticism closes the eyes, while analysis opens them. Analysis allows winners to see what they can't, which is why they also see opportunities that no one else can see. And the ability to see opportunities that other people can't see is the key to all kinds of success. For a person who wants financial freedom, real estate is a powerful investment vehicle. It is a unique investment vehicle. But whenever I mention the medium of real estate, I often hear this: "I don't want to fix toilets." Peter Lynch calls this noise. My rich father called it the pessimist's excuse. A person who criticizes and does not analyze. A person whose mind is clouded by doubt and fear, which is why he cannot open his eyes. When someone says, "I don't want to fix toilets," I feel like asking in return, "Why do you think this is my favorite job?" They are actually saying that toilets are more important to them than what they need. I talk about being free from the rat race, and their attention is focused on the toilet. This thought process is what keeps most people poor. They keep criticizing instead of analyzing. Wealthy Dad used to say, "The key to your success is hidden in, I don't want to do it." I also don't want to fix toilets, so I make a good effort to find a property manager who will handle the job of fixing toilets. Finding a great property manager to handle a house or apartment increases my cash flow. But more importantly, a great property manager allows me to buy a lot more real estate because I don't want to fix toilets. A good manager is the key to success in the real estate field. Finding a good manager is more important to me than finding good real estate. The best property managers are often given information about the best deals in real estate in advance, which makes them even more valuable.
So whenever I see people focusing on their "I don't want to do that" and taking their focus away from what they want, I understand that there is a lot of noise in their brains. The little chicken has become dominant in their minds, yelling, "The sky is falling and the toilet is broken." So they avoid their don't wants, but they pay a big price for it. They will probably never get what they want in life. Instead of analyzing, the little chicken sitting inside them shuts down their brains. Rich Dad told me one way to deal with the little chicken: do what Colonel Sanders did. At the age of 66, he lost his business and was living on a Social Security check. The amount was very small, so he started traveling all over America to sell his fried chicken recipe. He was told no 1,009 times before someone said yes, and later he became a millionaire at an age when most people want to quit work and relax. Rich Dad would say about Harlan Sanders, he was a brave and determined man. So whenever you are in doubt and feel a little afraid, do what Colonel Sanders did with his little chicken. He fried it. Laziness and greed. Busy people are often the most lazy. We have all heard the story of the businessman who works hard to earn money. He works hard to provide good money for his wife and children. He works a lot of overtime at the office and even brings office work home on weekends. One night when he comes home, he finds the house empty. His wife has left the house with the children. He knew that his relationship with his wife was weak, but instead of working to strengthen the relationship, he was busy at the office. When the family left, he became depressed and started neglecting his work, which resulted in him losing his job as well. Today, I often meet people who are so busy that they don't even care about their own wealth. And there are also people who are so busy that the reason behind both is the same. They are busy and they want to stay busy because they want to avoid something they don't want to face. No one needs to tell them this. Deep down in their hearts, they know it. In fact, if you remind them, they will get angry or annoyed. If they are not busy with their jobs or with their children, they are often busy watching TV, fishing, playing golf, or shopping. But deep down, they know they are avoiding facing something important. This is the most common form of laziness. Laziness by being busy. So what is the cure for laziness? The answer is a little greed. Many of us were taught during our upbringing that greed or desire is a bad thing. My mother would say, greedy people are bad. However, we all have a desire to have beautiful, new, or exciting things. So to keep that feeling of desire in check, parents often associate that desire with a sense of guilt. My mother's favorite phrase was, "You always think about yourself. Don't you know you have siblings too?" This was my father's favorite phrase. "What are you asking me to buy? Do you think we're made of money? Do you think money grows on trees? You know we are not rich." The words didn't affect me as much as the combination of anger and guilt behind them. In contrast, the guilt trip was, "I am sacrificing my life to buy this for you. I am buying this for you because my parents never bought it for me when I was a child. I have a neighbor who is poor, but he doesn't want to keep his car in his garage. The garage is full of his children's toys. Those spoiled children get what they want as soon as they want it. He says every day, I don't want them to feel a lack of anything. He hasn't saved anything for their college education or his own retirement, but his children have all the toys in the world. He recently got a new credit card in the mail and took his children on a trip to Las Vegas. He said with a great sense of sacrifice, I am doing this for the kids."
Rich Dad had forbidden these words, "I can't afford that." This is what I used to hear in my house. Instead, Rich Dad expected his children to say, "How can I afford that?" He believed that saying, "I can't afford it," shuts down your brain's doors. It doesn't need to think about anything else. On the other hand, saying, "How can I afford it?" opens the brain's doors and forces it to think and search. But most importantly, he felt that "I can't afford that" is a lie, and the human spirit knows this. The human spirit is very, very powerful. He would say that it knows it can do something. If your lazy brain says, "I can't afford it," then a war starts inside you. Your spirit gets angry, and your lazy brain has to defend its lie. The spirit yells, "Let's go to the gym and exercise." And the lazy brain says, "But I'm tired. I really worked hard today." Where the human spirit says, "I'm tired of being poor. Let's get rich." To this, the lazy brain says, "Rich people are greedy. Besides, there's a lot of trouble. It's not safe. There's a risk of losing money. I already work hard enough. I already have to work too much at the office. Look how much work I have to do tonight. I can't afford it." "I can't afford that" also produces sadness and helplessness, which can lead to disappointment and often depression. "How can I afford it?" opens the door to possibilities, excitement, and dreams. So Rich Dad wasn't so concerned about what we wanted to buy if we understood that asking the question, "How can I afford it?" produces a more powerful brain and a more progressive spirit. So he might not have given anything to Mike. Instead, he would ask, "How can you afford it?" And this included college, the cost of which we paid ourselves. He wanted to teach us the process of achieving the goal, not the goal itself. In my understanding, the problem today is that millions and billions of people feel guilty about their desires or their greed. This is their old childhood upbringing. Although they want good things in life, most people have this old ingrained idea in their subconscious, "I won't get this," or "I can never afford this." When I decided to get out of the rat race, the question in my mind was, how can I get out of the rat race so I never have to work again? After that, the answers and solutions started coming to my brain by themselves. The most difficult part was to fight the beliefs of my real parents. We can't afford this. Stop thinking only about yourself. Why don't you think about others? And similar words that were used to suppress my greed and fill me with guilt. So how can you overcome laziness? Once again, the answer is a little greed. This is the radio station called WIIFM, which means, what's in it for me? People need to sit down and ask this question. What will life be like if I never have to work again? What will I do if I have all the money I need? Without this little greed, the desire for something good, there can be no progress. Progress in our world happens only because we desire a better life. New inventions are made only because we desire something better. We go to school and study hard for this reason because we want something better. So whenever you find yourself avoiding something that you think you should do, just ask yourself one question. What's in it for me? Be a little greedy. It is the best cure for laziness. Everything has a bad side. So too much greed is not good either. But just remember what Michael Douglas said in the movie Wall Street. Greed is good. Rich Dad would put it another way. Guilt is worse than greed because guilt deprives the body of its spirit. I think Eleanor Roosevelt said it best. Do what you feel in your heart to be right, for you'll be criticized anyway. You'll be damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Overcoming bad habits. Our habits have more influence on our lives than our education. After watching Arnold Schwarzenegger's Conan, a friend said, "I want a body like Schwarzenegger." Most of the companions nodded in agreement. Another friend said, "I've heard that he was actually very weak and skinny at one time." "Yes, I've heard that too," another one said. "I've heard about his habit that he goes to the gym almost every day." "Yes, and he looks like it too." The pessimist of the group said, "No, I bet he was born this way. Besides, forget about Arnold. Let's have a beer." This is an example of how habits control behavior. I remember once I asked Rich Dad about the habits of the rich. Instead of giving a direct answer, he explained to me with an example, as he always did. Rich Dad asked, "When does your father pay his bills?" "On the 1st of every month," I said. He asked, "Does he have any money left?" I said, "That's the main reason he is in financial trouble." Rich Dad said, "His habits are bad. Your father pays everyone else first. He pays himself last, and only if there's something left. Usually nothing is left." I said, "But the bills have to be paid, right? You're not saying that he should not pay his bills." "No, absolutely not," Rich Dad said. "I completely believe in paying bills on time. I just pay myself first, even before paying the government." "But what happens if you don't have enough money?" I asked. "What do you do then?" "Even then, I pay myself first, even if the money is less," he said. "For me, my asset column is more important than the government's." "But," I said, "don't the government people come after you?" "Yes, if I don't pay them," Rich Dad said. "Look, I'm not saying don't pay the government. I'm just saying that I pay myself first, even if I have less money." I asked, "But how do you do it?" Rich Dad said, "It's not a question of how. The real question is why." "Okay, why?" "Motivation," Rich Dad said. "What do you think? If I don't pay, who will complain the loudest, me or my creditors?" "Your creditors will definitely scream louder than you," I answered, choosing the obvious option. "If you don't pay yourself, you won't say anything." So you see, the pressure to pay taxes and other creditors after paying myself is so great that I am forced to look for other sources of income. This pressure to make payments becomes my motivation. I have taken extra jobs, started many companies, bought and sold in the stock market, done all kinds of things just so that these people don't scream at me. I worked harder, was forced to think, and overall became more clever and agile in matters of money. If I had paid myself last, I would not have felt any pressure, but I would have remained poor. So this fear of the government or other creditors is what motivates you. Exactly, Rich Dad said. Look, government money collectors are very dominant, and so are money collectors in general. Most people are afraid of these dominant people. They pay their money, but don't keep it for themselves. Look, most people let these dominant money collectors throw sand in their faces. I used the fear of dominant creditors to make myself stronger. The rebellious person becomes weaker. Forcing oneself to think about how to create extra money is like a weightlifting exercise in the gym. The more I exercise my financial muscles, the stronger I become. Now I am not afraid of those dominant creditors. I liked what Rich Dad said, that if I pay myself first, I become financially, mentally, and economically stronger. Rich Dad nodded. And if I pay myself last, or not at all, I become weaker. So bosses, managers, tax collectors, bill collectors, and landlords will keep pushing me around all my life. Just because I don't have good money habits. Rich Dad nodded, like a weak 98-pound man.
Overcoming arrogance. Rich Dad often used to tell me, I earn money because of what I know. I lose money because of what I don't know. Whenever I have been arrogant, I have lost money. The reason is that when I am arrogant, I truly believe that what I don't know is not important. I have seen many people use arrogance to try to hide their ignorance. I have often seen this happen while discussing financial statements with accountants or other investors. They brag in the discussion and try to prove that their words are right. I understand that they have not the slightest knowledge about what they're talking about. They are not lying, but they are not telling the truth either. In the world of money, finance, and investment, there are many people who do not know what they're talking about. Most people in the money industry just parrot memorized phrases like a second-hand car salesman. When you know you are ignorant about a topic, start increasing your knowledge by finding an expert in that field or a book on that subject. Essentially, there are 5 main reasons why even financially educated people cannot generate a lot of cash flow. These are, first, fear; second, cynicism; third, laziness; fourth, bad habits; and fifth, arrogance. Let's discuss each of them in detail. Fear and cynicism. The difference is, how do you handle fear and loss? The main difference between a rich and a poor person was in handling fear. It's not bad to be afraid. One way to get out of it is to start early and take advantage of the power of compound interest. There is a huge difference between a person who starts saving at age 20 and one who starts at age 30. But what if you don't have much time to invest or you want to retire early? Rich Dad advised thinking like a Texan in this matter. Bet big, win big, lose big. Your attitude towards loss is what matters. When Texans win, they are proud, and when they lose, they brag. In Robert's life, victory has often come after defeat. He has not met any rich person who has not lost money, but he does not stand out of the game for fear of defeat. The defeat at the Alamo was a tragic military defeat, but Texans converted it into a slogan, "Remember the Alamo," so that it would motivate them for their great victory. Don't bury your losses like the Texans. Get motivated by them. Winners get inspiration from defeat. Losers break down in defeat. John D. Rockefeller once said, "I have always tried to turn every disaster into an opportunity." Even Pearl Harbor was turned into a profit after America's big defeat because it motivated the country to become a world power. Winners know that failure motivates victory. So why be afraid of failure when it can lead you to greatness? Understand that not being afraid of failure does not mean you cannot hate to fail. Most people play to avoid loss when they need to play to win. This is why so many people struggle financially. They may have a safe, intelligent, and balanced portfolio, but it is not a winning portfolio. They are playing to avoid losing. A balanced portfolio is not a bad thing, but it will not help you achieve a big win. Successful investors do not play the game this way. You have to be a little unbalanced at the beginning, but you have to focus.
Put your eggs in a few baskets and focus completely on them. Building or increasing your wealth column does not require difficult math, but it definitely requires courage and the right attitude towards failure. Overcoming cynicism. Whether it is our own self-doubt or the doubts of other people, we often do not act because of that doubt. We play the game defensively. As a result, opportunities pass us by. It takes a lot of courage to not let your doubts and fears be excited by rumors, disappointment, and doomsday talk. But the intelligent investor knows that the worst-looking time is actually the best time to make money. When everyone else is too scared to act, they pull the trigger, and they get the reward. Robert gives an example of a friend who was about to buy an investment condo at a very good price, but backed out at the last moment when a neighbor told him it was a very bad deal. The neighbor was not an investor. If he had made this deal, his investment would have doubled, and he would have started getting out of the rat race. Robert is willing to accept a much smaller return from suspicious people for a small portion of his wealth. Doubt is expensive. Doubt and pessimism force most people to accept a return. Rich Dad liked to say, pessimists criticize, while winners analyze. Winners keep their eyes open and see opportunities that no one else has seen. Real estate is a powerful investment vehicle for anyone willing to achieve financial freedom. It is a unique investment vehicle, but whenever Robert mentions real estate as a medium, he often hears, "I don't want to fix toilets." They focus on the toilets, and for this reason, remain poor. Many people stay away from the stock market because they don't want to lose money, but they have deprived themselves from making money by closing their mind to that investment vehicle. Overcoming laziness. Being busy is one of the most common forms of laziness. So busy that one doesn't care about their wealth, their health, or their relationships. What is the cure? A little bit of greed. This may be difficult to hear because many of us were raised to believe that greed or desire is a bad thing. Instead of saying, "I can't afford that," change your mindset to, "How can I afford that?" This opens the brain and forces it to find solutions. "I can't afford that" is a lie. The human spirit knows that it can do anything. By saying you can't do something, you are creating a conflict between your spirit and your lazy brain. From "how can I afford that," the brain and spirit become stronger. When Robert decided to get out of the rat race, he asked, "How can I handle never having a job or business again?" His brain started providing solutions, but the hardest part was fighting against that old tradition that tried to create guilt to suppress such greed. Without that slight greed, that is, desire to achieve something good, there is no progress. Our world advances because we all desire a good life. New inventions happen because we desire something good. We go to school and study hard because we want something good. Excessive greed is bad, but a little greed can motivate you.
Overcoming bad habits. To be successful, you must build successful habits. Poor Dad always paid everyone else first and himself last, but he often had very little left. Rich Dad always paid himself first, even when he had little money. He knew that if he didn't pay the creditors and the government, they would cause trouble. This encouraged him to find another form of income. If he had paid himself last, he would not have felt this kind of productive pressure. Where to get the extra income to pay the creditors? Overcoming arrogance. Rich Dad said that every time he was arrogant, he lost money because he thought what he didn't know wasn't important. Many people use arrogance to hide their ignorance. Robert has seen in conversations with accountants and other investors that they try to make their point in the conversation, but after a little argument, it becomes clear that they don't know what they're talking about. Ignorance is not a bad thing if, in response to your ignorance, you find an expert in that field and educate yourself. The left hemisphere side. Choose to analyze instead of criticize. Pessimists criticize, but winners analyze and see the opportunities that others have missed. The right hemisphere side. Overcome old habits by creating new ones, like paying yourself first instead of last. The subconscious side. The fear of failure keeps most people out of the game. Instead, use failure as an inspiration for success.
just as the Texans did with the memory of the Alamo. What was Robert saying? Now is the time to think. Ask yourself what Robert is saying in this example and why he says it. In this section, you don't have to agree or disagree with what Robert says. The goal is to understand what Robert is saying. Remember, this course is designed to be collaborative and supportive. 2 brains are better than 1. If you can't understand what Robert is saying, do not hesitate to ask for help understanding. Take the time to discuss each example until you understand it. The fundamental difference between a rich person and a poor person is how they manage fear. I have never met a golfer who has never lost a golf ball. I have not met lovers whose hearts have never been broken. And I have never met a rich person who has not lost money. They just knew who they were and how they would handle the loss. They used to turn defeat into victory. Texans don't bury their failures, they are motivated by them. They take their failures and turn them into inspiring slogans. When clouds of fear and doubt hover over our thoughts, we all become a little timid. Getting out of the rat race is technically easy. It doesn't require a lot of education, but doubt paralyzes most people. I can't afford it creates sadness, a helplessness that leads to frustration and often depression. How can I afford it opens the door to possibilities, excitement, and dreams. If I pay myself first, I'll be financially and mentally stronger. There are a lot of people in the world of money, finance, and investment who have no idea what they're talking about. Additional questions. Now that you understand the words spoken by Robert in this chapter, it's time to apply the stories mentioned in it to yourself and your life. Ask yourself the questions below and discuss them with your study partner. Be honest with yourself and your partner. If you don't like some of the answers you are giving, ask yourself if you're ready to change. Take on the challenge of changing your thoughts and mentality. Question 1. Have you ever felt the fear of failure in your life? Did you overcome that fear? How? Question 2. Rich Dad advised that we should have a Texan-like attitude. Win big, but if you lose big, brag about it and use it as an inspiring slogan. What is the biggest challenge for you in adopting this attitude? Does it thrill you or scare you? Question 3. How do you handle the critics in your life who discourage you from taking risks when you believe you have a good chance of winning? Question 4. Have you ever stayed away from a specific investment vehicle because of I can't? For example, I don't want to invest in real estate because I don't want to fix toilets. How can you react differently next time? Do you agree with the statement that a little greed is the answer to treating laziness? Why or why not? Has greed or desire motivated you in life? Do you pay yourself first or do you pay your bills first? If you pay yourself last, what steps can you take to change that? Have you ever lost an opportunity due to ego? What did you learn from it? Is there an area of financial knowledge where you are ignorant? What resources can you find to educate yourself on that? Terminology. Stop. Definition of the term. It would be nice if I could say that it was easy for me to collect assets, but it wasn't. How to get started. This question is often asked of me. In response, I tell them the thought process I go through every day. Actually, finding the best deals is easy. That's my promise.
The power of heroes and learning how much they earned and how they rose from the minor leagues. When I was 9 or 10, when I stepped onto the baseball field to play, whether I was playing first base or catcher, I wasn't me. I was pretending to be a famous baseball player. This is a powerful way to learn, but as we become adults, we often lose it. We lose our heroes. Today, I see little kids playing basketball near my house. On the court, they're not little Johnny. They're pretending to be their favorite basketball heroes. Imitating heroes is a really powerful way to learn. As I've grown up, I have new heroes. Today, I have golf heroes, and I try to imitate their shots. I try to read everything about them. I also have heroes like Donald Trump, Warren Buffett, Peter Lynch, George Soros, and Jim Rogers.
I know their statistics just as I knew my baseball hero's ERA or earned run average and RBI as a kid. I keep an eye on what Warren Buffett invests in and try to read everything about his view of the market and how he selects stocks. I also read about Donald Trump and try to understand how he bargains and closes deals. Just as I wasn't really myself when batting on the baseball field, when I'm in the market or negotiating, I subconsciously imitate Trump's boldness. Or when analyzing a trend, I see it through Warren Buffett's eyes. By having heroes, we tap into a huge source of our hidden potential. But heroes do more than just inspire us. Heroes make things look easy. Because things look easy, we want to be like them too. If they can do it, so can I. When it comes to investing, many people present it as difficult. Instead, find heroes who make it easy. The power of giving. Teach and you shall receive. The power of giving. Both of my fathers were teachers. My rich dad gave me one lesson that has stayed with me my whole life: the need to be benevolent, or to give. My educated dad gave a lot of his time and knowledge, but never donated money. He usually said that when he had some extra money, he would donate, but he clearly had very little extra money. My rich dad donated both education and money. He strongly believed in tithing. He always said, if you want something, you have to give it first. Even when he was short on money, he still donated to his church or his favorite charity. If I can leave you with just one idea, this would be it. Whenever you feel a lack or need for something, give what you want first, and it will then return to you in great abundance. This is true for anything: money, laughter, love, or friendship. I know people often want to do this last, but I want to say that I have always benefited from it. I believe the principle of giving and receiving is true. So I give what I want to receive. I want money, so I give money, and it returns in great abundance. I want sales, so I help someone make a sale, and my sales increase. I want connections, so I help someone make connections. Like magic, my connections also increase. I heard this proverb many years ago: God does not need to receive, but humans need to give. My rich dad often said, the poor are greedier than the rich. He made it clear that if a person is rich, it means they were giving others something they wanted. Whenever I have found myself in need of money or help in my life, I have asked my mind what I want and then decided to give it first. And whenever I have given, it has always returned to me. This reminds me of a story. A man was sitting with firewood in his hand on a winter night. He was looking at the fire and shouting, "When you give me some warmth, I will give you wood." Whether it's about money, love, happiness, sales, or connections, people only need to remember that to get what they want, they have to give first. What do I want, and how can I give it to someone else? Often, just this thought begins a shower of blessings. Whenever I feel that people are not smiling at me, I start smiling and say hello. Like magic, suddenly a lot of smiling people gather around me. It's true that your world is your mirror. So I say, teach, and you shall receive. I have found that the more I teach those who are willing to learn, the more I learn. If you want to learn about wealth, teach it to someone else. This will flood your brain with new ideas and formulas. There have been times when I have given but received nothing back, or what I received was not what I wanted. In such situations, after deep observation and self-analysis, I found that I was giving in order to receive in that instance, not for the sake of giving. My father taught teachers, so he became an excellent teacher. My rich dad always taught young people how to do business. Looking back, I can see that he became more intelligent by generously sharing his knowledge. There are forces in this world much smarter than us.
You can get there on your own efforts, but with the help of those forces, the work becomes much easier. For this, you just have to be generous, and those forces will also be generous toward you. Awakening Your Financial Genius. Study Session, Chapter 8, Lesson 8. Starting. It's easy to find great deals. It's like riding a bicycle. After a little wobbling, it becomes easy. But when it comes to money, it requires determination to get past that wobbling stage. You need to awaken the sleeping financial genius within you to find these great deals. Our culture has taught us that the love of money is the root of all evil. We just have to find a profession and work hard, and when we get old, the government will take care of us. The message is still to work hard, earn and spend money, and when we are short on cash, we can always borrow money. And this is why the financial genius within many of us is asleep. But we need to awaken that financial genius to find the million-dollar deals of our lives. Finding a job and working for money is much easier, but it's not the path to wealth. If you want to go against the mainstream, Robert explains the thought process he goes through every day. 10 steps to awaken your financial genius. Follow the lives of those you want to be like, or create your own. Your financial genius is worthy of this work. 1. Find a reason bigger than reality, the power of the spirit. Many people want to be rich or financially independent, but they back off because the path to get there seems too difficult. Like a prospective Olympic swimmer who sacrifices time and social events for hours of hard work in the pool and rigorous study, one needs a strong, clear goal or reason to overcome obstacles. The reason or purpose is a mix of I want and I don't want. Like Robert's reason for being rich. First, his I don't wants, because they create the I wants. He doesn't want to work his whole life. He doesn't want job security like his parents and a house in the suburbs. He doesn't want to be an employee and be busy working in his career, trading time with loved ones, just so the government can take the fruit of his labor after he dies, as happened with his father. What does he want? Robert wants to be free to travel the world at a young age and live a life he loves. He wants to be independent and have control over his time. He wants his money to work for him. Like Robert's reason for being rich, you should also have a strong emotional reason because they will keep you on this path through setbacks or successes. Robert lost money many times, but he continued his journey because his reason was strong enough. He wanted to be independent by age 40, but he was able to reach his goal by age 47. Getting rich wasn't easy, but it wasn't hard either. If Robert didn't have a strong enough reason, it would have been incredibly difficult. If you don't have a strong enough reason, Robert urges you not to listen any further because it will seem like too much work. 2. Make daily choices. The power of choice. Every day you have the choice to be rich, poor, or middle class. Your spending habits tell you who you are. The spending habits of the poor are like those of the poor. A long time ago, Robert chose to be rich. His friend Mike, after inheriting a healthy asset column, chose to learn how to maintain it. While rich families pass on their wealth to the next generation, most people choose not to be rich. They tell themselves that they have no interest in money, or that they're still young and don't need to worry about it, or they make countless other excuses. But these excuses rob them of their most valuable asset, their time, and deprive them of learning. Every day we all have the choice of what to do with our time and money and what to put into our brains. Robert chooses to be rich, and he makes that choice every day. He urges people to invest in education first, because our brain is our most powerful tool. Once we're old enough, we all have the choice of what we will pour into our brains. But instead of choosing to invest in learning, most people just keep buying investments. To continue his learning process, he goes to at least 2 seminars every year.
In 1973, he went to a 3-day seminar where he was taught how to buy real estate with no down payment. He spent $385 on the seminar, and thanks to this seminar, he has earned at least $2 million and has also been able to not work for the rest of his life. He also loves CDs and audio boxes so he can review them after listening. Once, he didn't agree with what an investor was saying, but after listening to his CD 20 times, he finally came to understand why that person had said what they said. He understood this because he kept his mind open even though he originally disagreed with that investor. Now he has 2 ways to analyze a problem, which is invaluable. Robert has chosen to read and listen to others to understand what many people think, from Donald Trump to George Soros. This way he can benefit from their mental power. When you learn something new, you often have to make mistakes to fully understand it. Arrogant or critical people are afraid to take risks, so they often don't listen to experts. It's not a question of intelligence. An intelligent person can also be ignorant if there's a point of arrogance mixed with their cleverness. On the other hand, a truly intelligent person welcomes new ideas. A new idea combined with pre-existing ideas can turn into something wonderful. Listen, learn, and have a long-term view of wealth. Don't have a get-rich-quick mentality. Before investing in stocks or real estate, invest in your biggest asset, your brain.
3. Choose friends carefully. The power of association. Robert learns from all his friends, from those who have money and he seeks their knowledge, and also from those who struggle financially. The latter group teaches him what not to do. He says that many of his friends who have earned over $1 billion have said the same thing. Their poor friends never ask them how they did it. They just want a job or a loan or both. Robert warns us not to listen to poor or fearful people. When it comes to investing, for them, the sky is always falling. They can always tell you that in any group of experts, there is always one who says the market will fall and another who says the market will rise. Listen to both because both have valid arguments. Be honest with yourself and don't follow the crowd. This can be one of the most difficult parts of wealth creation. The crowd usually arrives too late for a great deal. Instead, look for a new deal that may seem scary. Don't try to time the market. Get into the right position for the next wave. An intelligent investor buys an investment when it is not popular. They know that profit is determined not at the time of selling, but at the time of buying. It's all about insider trading, its legal forms. Being an insider, having rich friends who have information about where money is being made. You want to hear about the next rise? Get in and get out before the market crashes. That's what friends are for. And that's financial intelligence. 4. Master one formula, then learn a new one. The power of fast learning. Be careful what you learn, because you become what you put in your brain. The average person has a basic formula. Go to work, earn money, pay bills, fill the checkbook, buy some mutual funds, and then go back to work. If you don't earn enough, you have to change the formula. Many years ago, Robert went to a weekend class where he was taught how to buy real estate foreclosures. He learned a formula and worked with it. In this process, he earned several $1 million, and then he went in search of new formulas. He didn't always use new information directly, but he always kept learning. Many colleges have classes on financial planning and buying traditional investments. 5. Pay yourself first. The power of self-discipline. This can be the most difficult if it is not part of your structure, but personal self-discipline is the biggest factor that separates rich, poor, and middle-class people. The world fools and pressures you from all sides, and if you don't have the endurance to withstand financial pressure, you can never get rich. Robert teaches his students in his entrepreneur class that the 3 most important managerial qualities for starting a business are cash flow management, people management, and personal time management. This applies not only to entrepreneurs, but to everyone, and each of these qualities grows with the skill of self-discipline. Although many people repeat the saying, "Pay yourself first," very few have the discipline to follow it. Compare these 2 diagrams, the people who pay themselves first and the people who pay everyone else first.
Follow the flow of wealth and see how this person pays themselves before paying the bills. Investing in the asset column does not mean you don't pay your bills responsibly. It just means you pay yourself first. You can see that by paying everyone else first, there is very little or no money left to invest in the asset column. It has happened to Robert and many others that sometimes the cash flow was not enough to pay himself and the bills at the same time. Still, he paid himself first. This requires internal fortitude when bill collectors are shouting, but it prioritizes investing in assets and leads to getting rich. To successfully pay yourself first, keep these things in mind. First, never get into heavy debt that you have to pay. Keep your expenses low, build your assets first, and only then buy a big house or a nice car. Secondly, when you are short on money, let the pressure increase, but do not touch your savings or investments. Use the pressure to motivate your financial genius so that it can think of new ways to earn more money and pay your bills. This will increase both your ability to earn money and your financial intelligence. Remember that this rule does not encourage self-sacrifice or financial over-restraint. It doesn't mean pay yourself first and then go hungry. Life is for enjoyment. If you call upon your financial genius, you can have everything in life. You can be rich, and you can also pay your bills.
6. Pay your brokers well. The power of good advice. Many people try to save a few dollars by using a discount broker or selling their house themselves, but good professionals not only save you time, but also earn you money for you. Information is invaluable. A good broker will give you information, but at the same time, they will also earn money for you. Learn from them. The truth is, you can earn much more money from the information they provide than the money you pay them. Not all brokers are the same. Talk to them and find out how many assets or investments they have. Find a broker who has your best interest at heart and treat them fairly. Companies have a board of directors for this reason, because they know how valuable it is to have people around who are smarter than them. You should also have a board of directors. 7. Be an Indian giver. The power of getting something for nothing. The term Indian giver was created from a cultural misunderstanding when the first Europeans went to live in America. If a white person felt cold, the Indians would give him a blanket. The white immigrant considered it a gift, and when the Indian asked for the blanket back, he often felt bad. The Indian also felt bad when he learned that the white immigrant did not want to return the blanket. The deal was misunderstood. In terms of investment and the asset column, being an Indian giver is the key. That is, get your initial investment back and get it back quickly. An example is the condo that Robert bought for a cash payment of $50,000. It was rented for $2,500 per month in the good season and $1,000 per month for the rest of the year. Within 3 years, it had paid back his money. In fact, Robert's original $50,000 had returned to his pocket, and this property continued to earn money for him every month. Some people don't like risk and prefer to keep their money in a savings account, but there it earns nothing, and they get nothing for free with it. Robert says that every one of his investments should have a good side. Something should be free, like mini storage, a free piece of land, shares of stock, a house, and the risk should be limited. 8. Use assets to buy luxuries. The power of focus. Like other people, Robert loves luxuries, but he doesn't take on debt for them. Instead, he focuses on his asset column, so he doesn't have to earn money to buy those luxuries. He gives an example of a friend whose teenage son wants to buy a car. Instead of buying the car from his own or his son's savings, the father gives him $3,000 and some information about the stock market. Then he tells him that he cannot use that $3,000 directly to buy the car. He has to invest it, and when he earns $6,000, he can buy the car, and the original $3,000 will go into his college fund. Although the boy has not yet earned that much profit, his interest and knowledge have skyrocketed. He is getting an education that will be very useful in his life. Raising assets to pay for the things one wants, creating cash flow from the asset column, is simple in principle.
The difficult part is the mental fortitude to use money correctly. Borrowing money is easy in the short term, but difficult in the long term. Conclusion of the 10 points. 9. Choose heroes. The power of myth. A very powerful way we learn as children is by imitating our heroes. Robert continues to do this as an adult, although his heroes have changed. Instead of pretending to be Willie Mays at bat, he imitates Trump's boldness when negotiating, or Warren Buffett's analytical skills when observing trends. By creating heroes, we tap into their talent, and because they make it look easy, they inspire us to try.
10. Teach and you shall receive, the power of giving. Robert learned from his rich dad to give both money and education. He says if you want something, you have to give it first. Even when he was short on money, he donated to his church or his favorite charity. Whenever you feel a need for something, be it money, laughter, love, or friendship, give it first, and it will return to you in great abundance. This is also true for teaching and learning. The more you teach, the more you learn. Both of Robert's fathers proved this. Be generous with what you have and make sure you are giving for the joy of giving, not to receive. Left hemisphere plot. Use self-discipline to protect the priority of growing your asset column by paying yourself first. Right hemisphere plot. Keep your mind open to new ideas and new ways of doing things. These can increase the synergy of other stored ideas. Subconscious plot. Tap into the deep emotional reasons why you want to be rich. Strengthen them. They will help you overcome the obstacles on the path to wealth. What was Robert saying? Now it's time to think. Ask yourself, what is Robert saying in this example, and why is he saying it? In this section, you don't need to agree or disagree with what Robert says. The goal is to understand what Robert is saying. Remember, this curriculum is designed to be collaborative and supportive. 2 brains are better than 1. If you don't understand what Robert is saying, don't hesitate to ask for help to understand. Take time to discuss each example until you understand it. There is gold everywhere, but most people aren't trained to see it. Nothing in life is difficult without a strong reason or purpose. Financially, with every dollar that comes into our hands, we have the power to choose our future, to be rich, poor, or middle class. 90% of people buy TVs, and only 10% buy business books. We all have people in our lives who are highly educated or who believe they are smart, but their balance sheets show a different picture. I've noticed that my wealthy friends talk about money. They don't do it to boast, they are interested in it, so I learn from them and they learn from me. If you are tired of what you are doing or you aren't earning enough money, then it's just a matter of changing the formula through which you earn money. Those who lack inner fortitude often become victims of self-disciplined people. I have lost money many times, but I only play with money that I can afford to lose. The easy path often becomes difficult, and the difficult path often becomes easy. Additional questions. Now that you understand what Robert said in this chapter and the stories he told, it's time to apply them to yourself and your life. Ask yourself the questions below and discuss them with your study partner. Be honest with yourself and your partner. If you don't like some of your answers, ask yourself if you are ready to change. Take on the challenge of changing your thinking and your mindset. What are the reasons why you want to be rich? Your desires and what you don't want. When was the last time you went to a seminar or read a business book? Would you say your self-discipline muscle is in good shape, or does it need a good workout? Do you have a board of directors in your life, brokers and other professionals who pay good fees for excellent information and the ability to make money for you? Do you understand the concept mentioned in Step 7? If not, discuss it with your study partner. When you last bought a luxury item, how did you pay for it? Who is your financial hero? How do you follow this person in your work? Definition of terms. ROI, return on investment.
Chapter 9. Do this if you want more. Many people are not satisfied with my 10 steps. In their eyes, there's too much philosophy and not enough action. I think that understanding philosophy is just as important as taking action. However, there are some people who want to act rather than think, and some who think but don't do anything. I would say I'm a combination of both types of people. I love new ideas, and I also love to take action. So for those who want a to-do list to get started, I will briefly mention some of the things that I do. Stop doing what you are doing. In other words, take a break and evaluate what's working and what's not. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Stop doing what isn't working or isn't successful and look for something new. Look for new ideas. For new investment ideas, I go to bookstores and look for books on various and unique subjects. I call them formulas. I buy how-to books on formulas I know nothing about. For example, at a bookstore, I found Joel Moskowitz's book, The 16% Solution. I bought the book, read it, and the next Thursday I did exactly what the book said. Most people don't take action or apply new formulas after listening to someone else. My neighbor told me why the 16% formula wouldn't work. I didn't listen to him because he had never done this work. Find someone who has done the work you want to do. Take them out to lunch and ask for advice and business strategies. For a 16% tax lien certificate, I went to the county's tax office. There I found a government employee who worked there. I found out that he also invests in tax liens. I immediately invited him to lunch. He was excited and told me all his knowledge and the entire process. After lunch, he showed me places where I could get these types of deals until the evening. With his help, by the next day, I found 2 excellent properties that have since been paying 16% interest. It took 1 day to read, 1 day to act, and 1 day to get 2 great deals. Go to classes, read, and attend seminars. I look for new and interesting classes in newspapers and on the internet, many of which are free or cheap, which I want to learn. I also go to expensive seminars on that subject and pay their fees. It's because of the courses I've taken that I've become rich and free from the need for a job. Some of my friends never went to such classes and instead discouraged me, saying I was wasting my money. They are still working at the same old jobs today. When I want to buy real estate, I look at many properties and usually write an offer. If you don't know what a proper offer should be, where do I know? It's the real estate agent's job. They make offers. I do as little work as possible. A friend of mine wanted me to teach him how to buy an apartment house. One Saturday, he went with his agent and me to see 6 apartment houses. 4 were bad, but 2 were good. I wrote an offer for all 6, offering half the price the owners were asking. My friend and his agent almost had a heart attack. They thought it was insulting and would make the seller feel bad. But I think the agent didn't want to work that hard, so he didn't do anything and they went looking for a better deal. They haven't made a single offer to a landlord to this day, haven't sent a single proposal. That woman is still looking for the right property at the right price. Look, until you have the other party in front of you to make a deal, you won't know what the right price is. Most sellers ask for a very high price. It's rare for a seller to ask for a price less than the true value. So the moral of the story is, make an offer. Those who are not investors don't know how difficult it is to sell something. I had a plot of real estate that I had been trying to sell for months. I would welcome any kind of offer. Even if someone offered me $10, I would be happy. Not for the offer, but because someone showed interest. I might have increased the price, maybe asked for the full dollar price. This is how this game is played. The game of buying and selling is fun. Always remember this. It's fun, and it's just a game. Make an offer. Someone will say yes. When making an offer, I always add a condition of protection. In real estate, I make an offer with a language that includes a condition.
For example, approval from a business partner. Never reveal who your business partner is. Most people don't know that my partner is my cat. If they accept the offer and I don't want to make the deal, I call home and talk to my cat. Through this foolish statement, I want to show how easy and simple this game is. Most people make things much more difficult and take it more seriously than necessary. Finding the right deal, the right business, the right person, the right investor, or whatever it may be, is like dating. You can go to the market and talk to many people, make many offers, answer offers, negotiate, reject, or accept. I know many single people who sit at home and wait for the phone to ring, but it's better for them to go to the market, even if it's just a supermarket. Searching, making offers, rejecting, negotiating, and accepting are part of the process of almost everything in life. Once a month, jog, walk, or drive in a specific area for 10 minutes. This is how I found some of my best real estate investments. I jog in a specific area for a year and then look for changes. To profit from a deal, two components are necessary. One is a good deal, and the other is change. There are many good deals, but change turns a good deal into a profitable opportunity. So I jog in the area where I want to invest. By going there repeatedly, even small changes catch my eye. I recognize real estate signs that have been up for a long time. This means the seller will be more anxious to make a deal. I look at trucks coming and going. I stop and talk to the drivers. I talk to mail carriers. They have so much information about an area that it's surprising. I look for a bad area, especially an area where everyone has moved away due to some news. Sometimes I even wait for a year for signs of improvement. I talk to retailers, especially new shopkeepers, and find out why they came there. This takes only a few minutes a month, and I do it while I'm doing something else, like exercising or going to the store. Shop for deals in all markets. The consumer will always be poor. When there's a sale at the supermarket, say on toilet paper, the consumer runs and stocks up. But when there's a sale in the housing market or the stock market, often called a crash or correction, that consumer often runs away. When the supermarket raises its prices, the consumer goes shopping somewhere else. But when the housing market or the stock market raises its prices, that consumer often runs in and starts buying. Always remember, profit is not made when selling, but when buying. Look for a good deal in the right place. A neighbor bought a condominium for $100,000. I bought a similar condominium next to his for $50,000. He told me he was waiting for the price to go up. I replied that profit is made when buying, not when selling. He bought it through a real estate broker who didn't own any property himself. I bought it at a bank foreclosure auction. I learned how to do this by paying a $500 fee for a class. My neighbor thought a $500 fee for a real estate investment class was too much. He said he couldn't afford the money or the time, so he was waiting for the price to go up. First, find people who want to buy, then find a person who wants to sell. A friend was looking for a specific type of plot. He had the money but not the time. I found a plot larger than my friend's requirement. Then, after making the deal, I called my friend. My friend said he wanted a part of that plot, so I sold him the part he wanted and bought the land. I kept the remaining land for free. The moral of the story? Buy the cake and divide it into pieces. Most people look for things according to their ability, so their attention is on very small pieces. They only buy one piece of the cake, so in the end they pay a higher price for less. People who think small don't get big opportunities. If you want to be richer, think big. Think big. Retailers like to give discounts to wholesale buyers, simply because most business people prefer people who spend more. Even if your ability is low, you can negotiate for a better deal with others because you want a large quantity of a specific item. Small people always remain small because their thinking is small. They work alone or don't work at all. Learn from history. All the big companies in the stock market started as small companies. Colonel Sanders didn't become rich until he lost everything at the age of 60. On the other hand, Bill Gates was on the list of the world's richest people before he was 30. Action always beats inaction. These are some of the things I've done and still do to recognize opportunities. The important words are have done and do. As has been repeated many times in this book, you have to work before you can get the reward of a property. Start working now.
Make a lot of offers. You don't know what the right price is until you have the other party in front of you who wants to make a deal. Most sellers want a lot of money. It's rare for a seller to ask for a price that is less than the value of the item. It's fun and just a game. Keep making offers. Someone might say yes and make an offer with a protective clause. Once a month, jog, walk, or drive for up to 10 minutes in a specific area. Robert has found some of his best real estate investments this way. He would jog in a specific area for a year and look for changes. For him, a deal needs two components to be profitable: a good deal and change. There are many good deals, but it's change that turns a good deal into a profitable opportunity. This takes only a few minutes each month, and he does it while doing another task, like exercising or going to the store. Shop for deals in all markets. The consumer will always be poor. When there's a sale at the supermarket, like on toilet paper, the consumer runs and buys it. But when there's a sale in the housing or stock market, often called a crash or correction, that consumer often runs away from it. Remember, profit is made when buying, not when selling. Look for the deal in the right place. A neighbor bought a condominium for $100,000. Robert bought a similar condominium next to his for $50,000. He told Robert that he was waiting for the price to go up. Robert replied that profit is made when buying, not when selling. He bought it through a real estate broker who didn't own any property himself. Robert bought it at a bank foreclosure auction and learned how to do it by paying a $500 fee for a class. His neighbor thought that the $500 for the real estate auction class was too much. He said he couldn't afford the money or the time, so he was waiting for the price to go up. First, find people who want to buy. Then find a person who wants to sell. Buy the whole cake and divide it into pieces. Most people look for things according to their ability, so their attention is on very small pieces. They only buy one piece of the cake, so in the end, they pay a higher price for less. People who think small don't get big opportunities. If you want to be richer, think big. Think big. Retailers like to give discounts to wholesale buyers, simply because most business people prefer people who spend more. Even if your ability is low, you can negotiate for a better deal with others because you want a large quantity of a specific item. Small people always remain small because their thinking is small. They work alone or don't work at all. Learn from history. All the big companies in the stock market started as small companies. Colonel Sanders didn't become rich until he lost everything at the age of 60. On the other hand, Bill Gates was on the list of the world's richest people before he was 30. Action always beats inaction. You have to work to get the financial reward. Work now. Now, with the understanding of what Robert said in this chapter and the stories he told, it's time to apply them to yourself and your life. Ask yourself the questions below and discuss them with your study partner. Be honest with yourself and your partner. If you don't like some of your answers, ask yourself if you're ready to change. Accept the challenge of changing your thinking and mindset.